All right, hello everyone. I believe we're live. Hello everyone. This is Ursine Combo Lab Audio, episode number 15. In this episode, we'll be touching on the direction of modern fighting games. A very broad and general topic, but this will hope to unravel and unfold a number of the intricacies that were introduced to this era of fighting games and how they compare to previous eras. So today I'm joined by Frau, Retro Rage, and Rick Jace. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
I'll go first. Hello guys. My Discord ID is Frau. I'm currently a senior at UCLA studying computer science.
I'm Retro Rage, the local fighting game hater, as well as a senior in fighting game.
I'm Rig Jace. I'm a FGC coordinator at SDSU.
Thank you guys. So hopefully my guest, I'm honored to have them on to take part in the conversation on diving deep into the numerous topics and implications of how modern fighting games, where they've been going. Not only that, but what that means for the overall community as well as the future of fighting games overall. So a couple of things that we'll talk about before we get started. So first, I just want to point out that we won't be touching on any game in particular. We'll be touching on a number of games. And in fact, we might not even focus on games in particular. We might focus on abstract concepts. So just a forewarning, things get too deep and theoretical, then this might not be the conversation for you. But it's to be expected. We're talking about direction of modern fighting games. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the topics. So in terms of where we were back then, this entails the 09 era and prior, in terms of the 90s and such. So fighting games back then were pretty notoriously hard. At least that was the reputation. A lot of the inputs were difficult. A lot of the timings were precise. It required a lot of practice. Most of the time wasn't available to everybody because you had to go to the arcades to play them. Whereas now we have a lot of PCs, we have a lot of consoles in the hands of everybody at home, and people are able to grind from comfort of their very dark room and get good online because online play is fantastic as well. That means that fighting games have been adjusted in terms of the target audience because, companies overall are targeting highest sales and such, so they might not be making mechanics or things like that were focused on the hardcore audience that always went to the arcades to put those pennies in. So in terms of here's where I sort of invite you guys to give some of your thoughts on where we are right now compared to where we were then. Do you think any of, including the things I just mentioned, do you think anything about where the times are today impact the way devs have designed fighting games? And how do you think that might look even a few years down the line, since we have plenty of fighting games that are about to come on the horizon?
I'm thinking about I think fighting games back then, there was no like Wikipedia for fighting games, right? There's no like huge knowledge base for fighting games. I feel like fighting games kind of get solved like immediately on release nowadays, or like in like 1 month, in my opinion. Like it just gets solved really quickly, and the time to like explore and stuff is like non-existent. Like the lab monsters just go in, solve the game, and then they leave, and then you just have it there, and it's done. I think that's it. I personally think that's kind of an issue because people don't like for me. Okay. I think this is an issue for like mid-level players, or like people are kind of know what they're doing and kind of not know what they're doing, because they go into the game, they kind of be like, oh, there's all this like optimal stuff or things like that, right? And then they just get blasted, right? So like that, I feel like a modern games, like it's not really the game's fault themselves, but rather like the fact that internet exists. And I feel like developers may have to like keep that in mind, right? Like I don't know if the solution is make more mechanics so it doesn't get solved as quickly. I don't think that's like a way to go, but like I feel like fighting games that get released nowadays are kind of just solved immediately. Low key. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I was
I
thinking,
agree.
well, yeah,
I agree with you to a certain degree because as what Kyushi pointed out earlier, that a lot of older games are definitely more intricate, with not just like mechanic wise and execution wise, but as we see newer games come out like Strive and with games like Grand Blue Versus with a lot simpler executions, it's obviously a way for the developers to introduce the games to a wider audience, right? So it while for us, for us old timers, it's definitely like, we don't want a game to be solved that fast. It would be hard to retain our interests, but at the same time, from a business perspective, right? They have to consider, the different target audience. That's what I would say.
I was thinking to help kind of extend the time that game or reduce extend basically to extend the time that games get solved. I'd say kind of like what Street Fighter 6 seems to be doing is the drive system. So compared to something like Guilty Gear, like just like for example Exert, like sure there's like a lot of system mechanics and it feels like there's a lot you can do with them, but inherently some characters are going to have more access to it than others, like projectile characters, so like Stun Edge YRC or like Zweihander YRC. Not every character gets to use like those YRC options more often, so there is some inherent like solvedness there. But it looks like in Street Fighter 6, like almost anyone can use every part of the system mechanics like pretty evenly, or at least they seem pretty even. So I feel like with everyone sharing like a near common ground and the core of the game being about the resource management, I feel like it can help games get solved not as fast. That's my take.
Do you think if a game gets solved, like solved with quotes, right? Because this is like,
Nothing's
I don't know,
inherently
like some
solved,
other
yeah.
lab monster can come up and like break the game again. I don't know, but like with this quote unquote solved, do you think the games die quicker? That like if it gets like quote unquote solved? Because I look at like DNF Duel, right? Like the game came out, I looked at it, and I'm like, this game, like, I pretty like it got solved like immediately, like to be honest, right?
I
And I
played
feel
the
like
set. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, I feel like that like really killed the game. Like it's a big part of why the game died on top of like other factors. Like I look at the game and I'm like, even though I don't even play it, I'm like, there's nothing new to find anymore. Like kind of when I see the game. Yeah.
I actually played DNF Duel back when it held its second open beta, and I jumped into the game after seeing some of the characters, especially this one girl who uses this like flame wield, something just felt really off to me. And alongside with some of the like a more bare bone like the user menu, the menu and etc. I like right then I felt like DNF. Obviously what I'm saying now is it's all like afterwards, but right then I'm just trying to say that right then the game didn't feel like it's something that would take off for me.
You thought it was like what do you mean? Like what exactly about it?
It felt a little. I hate to use this term because I usually just hate to label stuff, but it felt a little like kusoge, right? To me, like when I played it, like back in its second open beta.
So do you think it was like too much freedom with like the mana thing? Like you could just do whatever you want. So like
It actually correlates a lot with what I think about games like MVC in general. Like in these games, you have a lot of freedoms, right? And it's really fun. These games are really fun, and you can spend endless hours in these games to lab in them, right? And from the spectator side, if you understand the game to a certain degree, it's really engaging. But it's just, to play at a level high enough that would be enjoyable for me. It's really intimidating because of how how some things that there are some things that you have to overcome, right? Like for in Marvel, there are probably some kind of like, you know, unblockable setups. You know, there are some infinite combos that you have to get through in games like MVC2. So it's the game is fun by nature, but you know, as a player, I really couldn't see myself, you know, getting as engaged in it compared to your usual 1v1 fighters.
I would agree with that because okay, so I hate tag fighters. Let me premise this. I hate tag fighters. I hate freedom. I'm fighting games. I like Street Fighters, very controlled, you know,
Yeah.
very I wouldn't call Street Fighter simple, but like very unfree relatively, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like when there's so much freedom, I feel like I have to make the most of all the freedom or I'm not playing the game, right? And therefore, I have to put more into the game that to like feel like I'm playing the game than I would for like a game like Street Fighter. Street Fighter, I go in, I practice a little bit, and then when I play the game, even if I get clapped, I still feel like I'm playing a game because I feel like the amount of freedom correlates to the amount of neutral interactions. Like when you play against someone else, right? When I play, like, dude, 3K is a huge example. I'll bring anytime I talk about fighting games, I'll probably always bring up 3K. But when I was playing Marvel vs. Capcom against him, every game I had like one interaction, and then I just lost. Okay?
And yeah.
You know what I'm saying? DNF
yeah,
Duel,
I get it.
you get touched, you just kind of lose, right? But in Street Fighter, I get touched, yeah, but there's like I get 5 more interactions before I actually lose, right? Or like interactions with quotes, right? Like I feel like I'm playing the game. You guys get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus when
go
I'm
ahead,
playing
go ahead.
like Skullgirls or Marvel vs. Capcom, when I'm playing like Guilty Gear Strive against a very good player, or like a player that just knows like just a good enough player, right? Or I'm playing one of these anime fighters, I just feel like I'm not playing the game sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I
like
get
that's
you.
inherent to their design. In my, that's just how, at least that's how it seems to me. Because in games with like higher movement options, you can be more slippery to. I guess you have more movement options to like evade attacks or basically not be in the place where your opponent wants you to be. So when you are caught out, it's much more punishing because you have that many movement options. Is my take. That's why you see like in Tekken, you have like a ton of like almost like just like backdashing or just moving around in neutral, just trying to feel each other out because each like combo does like 80% of your health, so it's really risky just to get hit even once.
But like, so that I understand that from like a mechanics perspective, but like, like, okay, I guess I shouldn't even bring this up, but like, because new players will probably play against new players, and all this stuff like literally doesn't matter, right? But like for modern fighting games, right? Like, if their target audience is new players, right? What do you think is the most important thing for like new players? Like for Street Fighter 6, like for example, right? Like getting the new player in and retaining them. Do you even feel like, okay, how many people actually like start up a fighting game and stick with the fighting game, right? Back then, like you went to I feel like back then it was already committed. You're going to an arcade, right? So those people just stick around, right? They've already passed the gate of barrier of playing like a fighting game, kind of like, because you know, going to the arcade, putting coins in, that's kind of like a big commitment ish, right? Like you have to like travel there. You have to be like want to play versus like someone who just purchases the game, sits down, and then like I have a bunch of games in my Steam library. I don't play like I haven't like touched a lot of them, right? Like yeah, I could put in the money in, but like that's not like really the commitment. So like when I pick up a fighting game, right? Like say a new player picks up Street Fighter 6. Do you think like what's gonna make them stay with Street Fighter 6? Right?
I think this is something that Strive actually did very well, or at least what I heard, because with the tower, the rank mode with Strive, it's on like up until like the celestial level, right? From what I've heard, that the rank mode in Strive is actually pretty well. The system is actually pretty well implemented. That you're actually playing against players that are like around your level. So this is a this is the right direction that Stripe is taking. Despite I personally have a lot of problem with some of this aesthetic design and putting all those aside, right?
Can I make a counterpoint real quick? So I had a friend who recently tried out Strive, and it's like basically literally his first fighting game ever.
Mhm.
And maybe this is just a matchmaking issue, but he got matched basically after doing like the bot matches. He got put into floor 2, and there's literally zero there, like 0 people in there. Everyone's in like 7, 8, 9, 10, right? No one's really in the bottom half of the game anymore. So I thought,
But I thought
was-
one of the options that you could do in the tower system was that you can actually change your own level up. I forgot what the limit was, but you're freely to like go above your own level, if I remember correctly.
yes, you can do
I think
that,
we get
but
to
you're
the
not
same
fighting
problem.
people your own level anymore.
Yeah, we get to the
that-
same
that
problem
is
where,
true,
like,
but-
I'm going against like someone like 3K and I'm getting
No,
clapped.
but you have to consider this is the innate problem of pretty much all competitive games, right? Well, for someone to get in at a later stage, how long has Strife been out? Like we're like a
I
year.
don't think so. Like you have games like I think it's a population issue. You have games like League of Legends, right? You can be in Bronze 5. There's a lot of people in Bronze 5. In fact, a majority of people are under gold. So,
Yeah,
like,
that is true, but you're comparing you're comparing us to something that's like that's it's not really comparable, comparing us to games like League, because
well,
the audience
it's just
is-
we don't have that much population, right?
yeah,
So, like,
exactly. So for us being in a niche genre and having a small amount of players to begin with, and then you have players like joining later, that's just that's inevitable, right?
well, so
Sorry to
then
butt
it
in, guys.
forces people.
Sorry,
Oh,
Retro
yeah.
Rage. You guys don't mind if I add in one more person to the conversation?
Oh
And you
yeah,
guys-
for
Yeah,
sure,
that's
for
fine.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Definitely.
okay. Sorry, continue then.
I was gonna mention that it then it forces people coming in to achieve a certain like gameplay level before they can like actually somewhat have a good time, right? And that's like the thing I was talking about, like, oh, you have to go into the lab and like actually figure out like some BNB, some way to like convert off something, right? Before you like actually get to play the game, right? At least feel like you're playing. I don't know if you can't get a person that's like equal skill level to you.
Yeah, so that's why a lot of developers now, they really focus on things like tutorial and solo content. So to keep the players engaged, right? To keep them engaged enough so that they will want to invest the time to get better, right?
So like, what do you think is a good example of like a game with like good single player content that you would say that?
I never really got into it, but I know MK has pretty good single player
Yes,
stuff.
I can talk more about that if you will let me.
Just let me finish. Just really fast. And obviously, everyone knows about Guilty Gear's tutorial, and what else? I think that's what I have so far. Was someone else going to say something?
So
Yeah,
okay.
Look, I just want to make something since I just joined. So good single player. What makes good single player content? Because like MK's story mode, it's very fun to watch and like interact with the QTEs and do some of the fights. It's not going to teach you anything. It's fun to watch and fun to go through, but it will not teach you.
That's correct. Yes,
Well, oh well, that just depends on the audience, right? Because you have to think about for a game like MK, a lot of the players who buys MK, I almost would say the competitive scene for MK is pretty small, right? So most people buy the game so that they could see the gore and check out the cinematics and maybe there's some really good collaborations like with
Yeah, because MK has that legacy status of nostalgia. Like MK was that edgy game from the 90s that was like no other game was this bloody and cool and edgy. And it has that legacy.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an outlier compared to our traditional fighting games. So that's why not that I'm suggesting all new fighting games should take the directions of Mortal Kombat, but it's something definitely that's worth to be explored.
I want to add one thing really quick. So this is something that I don't really see other fighting games doing, but I think it's like NRS's like biggest success that I've ever seen from MK11, and it's their Combat League system. So they do like a set ranked system. It'll be like a couple months out of the year is like your rank system, and they encourage pretty much anyone to just go grind rank and try to rank up a couple times. And if you hit like a certain rank, you are rewarded with skins basically for 3 specific characters that they decide for that season. So if it'll be like Halloween, it'll be like Halloween themed skins for like these 3 characters, and that's like how they are able to capture the casuals and kind of at least try to get their toes wet into like the more competitive rank side of fighting games rather than just grinding the single player loot towers just for the extra cost and bit pieces of gear, which is kind of what a lot of casuals did in previous games. But the MK11 Combat League system, I think, is a really great step forward to try and get people to actually play ranked.
There was another game that also tried to do that similarly, which was like Blue had its battle pass, where it's like after you get to a certain level, you get like skins for your weapons. It wasn't the characters, but it was your weapons and like so on. It wasn't as cool as MK's where you're changing the actual character, but it's still like sometimes it's just like you gotta accept some games aren't gonna be as like. I think that's something a lot of fighting game developers have. Your game is not gonna be MK. It's not gonna be Street Fighter. End of story.
Yeah.
That has to be an understanding. You have to understand it.
Yeah, when Rick Jace pointed out the skins, I actually would like to add on that. Like, I'm definitely a casual, probably even less than a casual when it comes to Mortal Kombat. I really enjoyed the part when I had to do. I think those are what are called the dungeons or whatever. Like where you have to like, where you can unlock your own skins by running through like certain dungeon or whatever. Yeah, like I personally really enjoy that, and you know I thought that kept me very interested to unlock cosmetics for characters that I would potentially want to use.
I think if the cosmetic is big enough of a change, it's worth it.
Yeah.
I know I can't say much for MK11 script since I haven't really played it that much, but I know for MKX's script there's like a genuine like decent amount of skins that they have unlocked. They have locked in the crypt. Like not all the best ones are paid DLC. There's a decent amount of good free ones in there.
Yeah. So these would be like the kind of single player content that you know, solo content that I was talking about. That would keep the players probably interested or engaged enough to be more involved in the genre and the series itself.
I mean, you have to think. How many fighting games are there? There's a lot of fighting games. We got Street Fighter, we got MK, we got Guilty Gear, we got King of Fighters, and so on and so on and so on. So it's like all these games are competing for all their attention. It's like, how do I know which fighting game is better for me?
The one that stands out the most.
To you, yeah. So it's like, what's gonna make one of these stand out? Like, I already know what MK Street Fighter is. What's gonna make Guilty Gear stand out to me? I'm not saying this is. I already play Guilty Gear, but I'm saying if I was a completely new person that only knows the 2 main franchises, and like I guess Tekken as well, because those are like the big 3. What's gonna make me want to get into like a new fighting game?
Yeah, and Rizwan makes a good point that I want to enroll a bit just to synthesize what we discussed so far. So we started, of course, on topic of DNF and perhaps games that weren't as polished from the get-go, and then we moved over to sort of how modern fighting games see to differentiate themselves, whether it's like regards to single player or what have you, like features that allow for new players to start to flock over towards that specific game. That's what sort of separates the now from the then, of course, because we didn't see as much of that back then. The features were already pretty good for the most part. It was just a matter of, was your game going to be the one that stood out the most at the arcade, right? Which is like just the Street Fighter pretty much at that point. But I do want to, if you guys don't have anything else to touch on for single player, I do want to give you guys one more chance to do so, because I do want to move the conversation along here. Anything else?
for like okay, so I played them fighting Herd recently,
Mhm.
and they actually have a story mode with what do you call it, development time in it. So like I was thinking, but no one touches it. Okay, I guess they can't. A lot of people can't move past like the IP, right? Of being like playing as horses or whatever. But like the single player content's actually really good, and like it teaches you the how to play the game, like progressionally. Like it actually, dude. I died on the first boss. I was like, oh, what the heck is going on, right? And it like I didn't know. Okay, there's like this snake attack from the boss that's like an overhead, right? And I didn't know that, or I thought it was like an unblockable. So I was trying to like run away to dodge it, right? And I kept getting hit because I wasn't like blocking because I was running away, right? But like, and then there was like a tail swipe attack that like goes across the screen. That's like a low, depending on which side it comes from, and like, it's like a tell and then like a reaction, right? And like these are all like poor, not only like fighting game mechanics, but like playing neutral in fighting games, right? You have to react to lows, react to highs, right? And I was like, dang, they actually put a lot of effort into the story mode, which is what I don't see in a lot of other fighting games, right? Like I don't know if the what modern fighting games, like the single player's purpose is to continue a narrative or like teach the player how to play the game, because I feel like for MK or NRS, they're not teaching you how to play the game. It's for the narrative, right? I play Injustice to experience the Injustice story, not to learn how to play Injustice 2, like in their story mode, right? So, do you think story mode should teach the person like how to play the game, or should it be like a narrative focus? Like, oh, like I know Guilty Gear Strive is like 6 hours of cinematics, right? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I do want to offer this, and this is just to hopefully be like a nice, you know, point to be raised for you guys to tackle. Are modern fighting games being played for the fighting game or for the story mode? We see that a lot of fighting game players don't care about the single player. No one cares about Strive story mode. And in fact, we started to see a lot of modern fighting games single player modes become even more bare bones. So it begs the question, like, is it even important anymore?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can actually touch on it. Remember Street Fighter V? That released with no arcade mode.
Yeah, people
Okay,
gave
so
the fight
yes,
they
we
deserve.
need some form of narrative, like some story mode, some arcade mode. Those two are the minimum plus versus. So that's the minimum that your game should have. Anything else is extra, and that's nice.
Nah, that's copium. I think arcade mode story mode could be like deleted. People are just saying things. I bet all those people complaining didn't touch story mode and didn't touch arcade mode. Guaranteed.
Yeah,
what?
that's exactly the point I'm making.
Look at the Steam charts. Look at the achievements. I bet none of them actually touch the story or like have like the chapter 1 completed. It's probably like
Okay,
let
to
me
be
fact
fair-
check myself.
To
Let me
be
go to
fair,
Steam charts right now.
there are several fighting games I have on my PC that I have completed all the single player stuff on my console. So my so my achievements are messed up.
Street
Yeah.
Fighter 5.
No, but it's a fair point still. Go ahead. From.
Yeah, I personally think narratives are very important because it helps developer to expand the universe and to add characters that would make sense, right? So without that, if you completely remove that and you start putting in new characters and new mechanics, it's after a certain point, it's just gonna feel very off.
Like you need to have a justification for why a character is in it. Sometimes it's like
Exactly,
like
yeah.
even Melty Blood justifies why there's fake characters in it.
Yeah, like because if you don't have those, they're just gonna feel like functions, right?
Oh,
Just-
no.
I got it.
no.
Okay, Street Fighter 5 is a bad example because you got fight money for a lot of fight money for doing the story.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at I fact checked myself. 50% of the people completed story. So
Yeah.
there was fight money involved there. I'm not sure if that's like 1-to-1. Maybe it's more talking about like the single player rewarding thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
when you're talking
yeah.
something, and when you're talking about an IP that's as established as like Street Fighter and KOF, sometimes it's actually okay to have certain mainline game in the series not to have any story, because KOF would be the perfect examples, right? Some of the Dream Match games literally have to they don't have any stories involved, and a lot of people still enjoy them. So it really depends on where you're stemming off from. Because if you're something just if you're just like a completely new game that's just trying to break off, let alone being a fighting game, if you don't have narratives going for it, that's just not going to work.
Okay, yeah, I hear you guys. So great points made. Seems like a trade-off, right? Like we have these single player wearing off, but there's starting to be more gameplay focus. In this regard, I feel like the gameplay hasn't really been nailed either. We can go ahead and dissect this as our next discussion topic. So we'll go ahead and move on. Do you feel like the direction of modern fighting games in terms of the actual gameplay is it leaves there to be any hope for the future of the genre? And to be more specific, I feel like a lot of fighting games come out these days and they have all these bare bones features, barely functional online modes, story modes being utter trash, and then their excuses like esports, like Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown. Like they had basically nothing in the game. Considering where the game was back in Virtua Fighter 4 Evo, the home console version of that game, one of the best single player contents, like basically of all time for the genre. And to see how far that series fell with the single player side of things, I don't know if esports is a great excuse considering how featureless that Ultimate Showdown is outside of like the visuals. But that aside, do you guys feel like where we are in terms of gameplay leaves there to be some hope for the future of the genre? Do you feel like the trade-off was worth it in this regard? And how do you think things might look if it wasn't?
I do not have much hope for. I don't think there's going to be really any new fighting games that have interested me. Like I have not been interested in a new fighting game since like Grand Blue Versus, and that's only because I like Grand Blue and I was like, yeah, fine, I'll play a slower paced game. But most of the time, a lot of these games they're taking away things that feel good to do. Like DNF movement feels really, really bad in DNF. Okay. So it's like, if I can't enjoy moving, I can't enjoy playing it already. And then it just feels like more and more games just want you to have less and less movement options, because less movement options means there's less ways to actually mess with your opponent. You don't have to worry about like all these other things, or it's like movement options are bad. It's like you're going to be limited in certain ways. So it's like easier for new people to pick up on those. Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's not just movement options, but just options in general. If we look back at the launch of Street Fighter 5, we had, Ryu could do things that would like a standing medium punch that would like reset your opponent in midair, and you can do a left or right. They have to like probably guess left or right if you cross under. They removed that, and you have some characters like Mika. Mika could do a mid-screen mix just by throwing the opponents to the other side and just take backdash. They removed that as well, and they're taking away a lot of different options, either offensive, defensive, or movement, and it really hurts the legacy players like us in a way that I don't think should be done in new fighting games.
Yeah, it makes games feel not as good and not as like diverse. So it's like the way someone will play this character will be more or less that way.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a very differential thing. So you're getting less options per character. You're getting options taken away, and then you have patch culture on top of that, where games are patched almost like every 3 months now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they obviously, their original intention is to, to prevent something that potentially may be broken, right? And to, quote unquote, to protect newer players' feelings. But, you really don't have to remove something. A great example would be probably like Guilty Gear with I think XX. Anji had a butterfly that could, that when you hit an opponent, and then the butterfly would like get larger, and then it would hit overhead. It was a very strong offensive tool, I think. And later in Accent Chord, I think they made it so that the regular version wouldn't do that anymore. But then in Accent Chord, they added a new mechanic which would let characters use pretty much the EX versions of those moves. and instead, ArcSys put that in the EX version. So players now have to commit resource in order to do options like that. So, which is a really good solution. I think, I personally think.
And yeah, I have to agree. It's like, I also think it's just really weird because for me, I went from Guilty Gear with with AC, like plus R specifically, Exerd, and now Strive, and I'm like, I just don't touch Strive because I don't like it, and I'm just like, I just don't like how it feels. Like these are not the characters I've been playing for like 8 years, and that just makes the game feel off.
Yeah.
And feel free to offer your points as well, Retro Rig, on this. I feel like just among all of these games, it's hard to find one that I gel with the most because all of them, as one of you pointed out, feel very similar. People have pointed this out on Artsis True Gaming, and I know, guys, like that's not the source of fighting game news, to say the least. But some of them make great points in that a lot of the fighting games these days aren't super attractive. They're not. They don't have as much soul that allows for someone looking, from the outside in, to be as enticed to pick it up for $60. Because I don't want to pay $60 to press, a couple of directional inputs that I can just, play Street Fighter for, which more people play, by the way. So do you feel like this has an effect on people's perception? And for these sort of more free games that have a more open mind or stay truer to their roots, such as the KOF series as a whole. Of course, SNK hasn't really given into this direction of modern fighting games as much as Capcom and ArcSys have. But do you feel like there's still room for those more unique games to still shine to the newer audiences?
I think that's just how naturally fighting game has evolved over the years, right? First of all, I'm just going to say you are hardly ever going to see stuff like one frame links in fighting games anymore. Like in especially in newer fighting games. Maybe in some really unique situation for some really unique setup under a really unique for a certain character. But just in general, you're not going to see one frame links anymore. Like I can guarantee you're not going to see that unless some crazy developer wants to go out and make a game specifically around that. But that's not something it's really deprecated in a way, I would say, that just doesn't that cannot blend in with how modern gaming anymore. Yeah. This goes along with other stuff like the pretzel input and KOF, and honestly, even in Strive, I still think some motions are absolutely unnecessary. Like the Strive supers, it's in a modern perspective, it's really a little bit too complicated to entice newer players. Obviously, I believe most of us are fighting game boomers who started off with one of the older ones, and we really value that legacy skill, and especially how how we wouldn't want to change how it would actually affect us and change our gameplay, which is understandable. So yeah.
There's one thing that I kind of see where the NRS developers were going with this, but I don't appreciate how the end execution of what actually happened. But they basically ported all their characters from MKX and basically more or less gave them like weaker versions of their existing moves, but they also their new variation system allowed for pretty much you can equip new special moves to your characters if you wanted to, swap out old ones, put in new ones, and you can kind of like customize your character to play exactly how you want them to play. So I thought that was like, I guess that's probably like a pretty big casual draw. I was like, oh, I can get like, oh, I like the aesthetic of Sub-Zero. I can make him play however I want him to play. I can make him play like a zoner, or I can make him play like a grappler or whatever like that. That can kind of I feel like that can attract a lot of new players. Just like more customization options, like for the actual gameplay. But then that also brings like the nightmare aspect to like the actual competitive side. Like, oh my god, I have to learn like 5 billion matchups because like
Yeah,
or like
exactly.
5 billion combinations of variations or whatever. So I'm
Mhm.
glad at least MK12 is going away with the variation system. They only really needed to do that with one game. But I do like that they at least tried to innovate, even though it didn't really necessarily go in the direction that I really liked.
But didn't it end up being the same thing anyway? People like quote unquote solved the variations, and there was really like only one variation that was like actually good, right? That
Think
people
so.
played.
There are definitely like, oh, this move is like just straight ass, or there's like, oh, this move is like pretty good. That's why it uses 2 slots instead of 1. There's definitely stuff like that. You could definitely experiment a little bit. Not everyone was using the exact same variations at the high level.
You know, I think what a lot of people want in their fighting game, but it's hard to put a finger on it. People say expressiveness, but I think what they really mean is feeling like feeling like you can do what you want to do without the game saying like no and slapping your hand away. I think that's what people really want. It reminds me of how like people would prefer to be involved in, let's say, voting. You know, I don't want to go any further than just saying voting, but you know, it allows you to feel like you have some part in the bigger whole. So in terms of fighting games, when you are able to find something in training mode that no one else has, you know, posted or published on the internet or anything like that, it feels like you're contributing to a bigger part of like the meta game. And you know, some people prefer to hide those sorts of techniques they find, but some people bring that to a tournament and realize it's super effective. And the fact that they're using it, no one else is using it, it makes them feel special and makes it feel like a more rewarding experience as well, especially when
Oh,
it's
that's
part of.
never gonna happen in modern fighting games anymore. Everyone posts their tech online now. Everyone just posts it everywhere.
Okay, yeah, I hear
Like
you.
someone,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like everyone's gonna post something online because they want their 15 minutes of fame. First of all,
yep.
second of all, yeah, as you were saying, a lot of games are too restrictive now to really keep digging for tech. Like even to this day, like BlazBlue, Central Fiction specifically, there's still tech being found for certain characters. It's like, huh, that's pretty good actually. That's actually kind of interesting. Like I think it was just like a couple months ago, someone found like an instant fuzzy for Lychee when she's never had one in this game. It's like, oh, okay. We're not gonna adapt it, but you could probably learn this if you wanted to.
Right, right. And do you feel like partially patch culture is what inhibits this sort of discovery?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
100%. Like pre Dragon Ball Fighters era, I want to say, is when patch culture was not the same, except for like Street Fighter having their yearly big patch or their patch twice a year. I think it was.
Yeah, but those were pretty good, I'd say. Street Fighter 4's
Yeah,
patches.
they had some pretty big patches, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, it's like everyone's like, I want another patch. The game's getting. I want another patch. The game's getting boring. And it's like, why are you bored? You should be enjoying playing the game, finding more stuff, and so on. But you have restrictive design decisions from the technical side, which restricts how much a player can do and how much they can discover. It's like, well, now what? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's leading to sort of staleness, especially early on. We see the fate of DNF, how quickly how quickly and long it fell in terms of like, you know, the distance. Anyway, I do want to point out a few things that some of the viewers mentioned before we completely miss them on this topic. So, Alago mentioned if you want to have a narrative in your game, you can have that at the same time as teaching your player about the game in some sort of story mode, but you should either have both or just the tutorial aspect. I think one of the biggest problems with fighting games now is how inaccessible they are to learn. Yes, it's fantastic when you have a community to learn from, but in the online era, we have so many more people who are not going to become involved in that community unless they're able to learn from the game itself. And learning by getting whooped, reading a giant wall of text, or having to search through forums can all be very impractical for a beginner. Accessibility in the gameplay itself can also be a huge part in this. I wouldn't have gone into fighting games if it wasn't for the story or the mission modes in Strive. It's aesthetic and the ease of access to start feeling like I was actually doing something cool. That being said, I think there is still a ton of depth in Strive. where mechanics like Roman cancel are easier to pull off at the baseline, but now offer more limitless possibilities through things like Drift RC and Fast RC. I've come to really love tough execution in games, but I think it's a huge turnoff when tough execution is the floor rather than the ceiling. That's a take. I know you guys will dissect that one. There's definitely a balance to be struck, as I think when games become more accessible, there is going to be some depth lost, but there is definitely a way to minimize that loss. And I think a lot of people forget that there is inherently a depth in fighting games against another player, no matter the game. I think he's referring to the meta game, which is present in pretty much any two-player competitive game. There's definitely a place for games with a ridiculous amount of depth that have a high barrier to entry, but by no means are some series progressing to be more accessible a bad thing. They can even lead people like me to be discovering games like Plus R. So, dissect that one, guys.
I think
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. So I think I'm like the newest fighting game player here. Like I came from Smash Brothers. My first fighting game was King of Fighters 13, and then I moved to Street Fighter 5, and then I played everything else. Right. So I went from 13 to Street Fighter 5, and I really enjoyed Street Fighter 5. In fact, I think Street Fighter 5 was actually what got me to like learn fighting games. Even though I'm like trash still, like I have like a pretty good understanding of how fighting game works based on what I did in Street Fighter 5. And I think the problem for like fighting game tutorials is that okay, they teach you your medium DP is invincible to air attacks, right? Oh wow, medium DP invincible air attacks, right? I don't care, right? That's just information. That's not applied information. If the tutorial said, here, you need to anti-air your opponent because if you don't, they're going to be plus in your face and they're going to start clowning on you, right? So you use anti-air DP to do, like prevent that from happening, and then they like did a thing where you had to do that to like prevent people. Like they reinforced that, you know, as like a fundamental idea. Like they taught neutral, like some fundamentals of neutral, rather than just saying, oh, you have anti-air medium DP, right? Like who cares, right? You know, like I feel like if they could have that kind of applied tutorial, it would be so much better, because I had to learn that the hard way. When I was playing Street Fighter 5, I lost like 300 matches before I could consistently, like it drilled into me that I had to stop letting opponents jump in on me, right? Like, but dude, you want every new player to lose 300 matches and spend like 96 hours, you know, losing and just mauling on like, you know what I'm saying?
I mean,
like,
wait. So first of all, people learn at different speeds. For you, it was 300 games. For another person, it could be 20. It all depends. Like some people
could
just
have
pick
been
things
20
up.
games for me had I had any like insertion of like, oh, someone jumping on you, all the interactions that just come in from one jump in, like I just had anyway. Like okay, I was learning through the game. Okay, so I didn't search up how to play fighting games tutorial, right? Like I was new to the game, so I didn't like search these up. I just played the game, right?
This is something. I understand what you're saying. This is something Guilty Gear Xrd did very well through its 50 mission mode, where they literally give you 50 missions where they give you 5 chances per each mission. You gotta get at least 3 out of 5. And it'll teach you every single nuanced, important thing that you need to know about Guilty Gear. It's like, oh, this is how you can catch someone teching after OTG. You throw them. This is how you DP. This is how you do this. And like they're going to try to do like an actual Oki setup on you, or like some actual real thing that you would see in a match, because they understood what Guilty Gear was.
Okay, I don't think you need 50 mission nuance. I think you need like 5 fundamental mission thing. Like not 50, you just need 5. 5 of your most important mechanics to play the game. Right? In Street Fighter, one of them is anti-air. That should be like if once people stop jumping on you.
That depends on the game. Like,
it depends on the game. Like, I feel like every game should be like that. Like they just give you the 5 fundamental, like neutral, how to play the game neutral, and like reinforce that. And then you can learn the nuances like later or whatever. But you just need to teach the person how to play the game and not like just get like destroyed like every game. I was getting destroyed at
comparing
round
Xbox
5.
to Street Fighter 5.
right?
Okay,
You know?
you guys don't mind if I butt in here. I think I think it even goes beyond like comparing Exodus 3 out of 5. Like, what comparison do we even have? I feel like no game has actually nailed a solid tutorial, or a solid enough tutorial that touches the bases that Retro Age is describing, or even any esports game outside of FGC for that matter. I feel like no like mainstream, well maybe like Legends of Runeterra, but that's not really an esports game. Let's just be real. Like it doesn't have half the player base of League of Legends or any of the bigger ones. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so just to touch on what you just said, so when you said something about esport, I just want to point out like League of Legends originally didn't even have a tutorial mode.
Nope.
And yeah, so one of the biggest thing about modern gaming is that people want to just jump in and have fun. Like no one wants to read wall of text or go through the and tutorial mode is just so mundane, and so that's why a lot of developers, especially fighting game developers, overlook that. And but then later, like now, they start to realize how important it is when you're, especially when you're trying to get people to get people to get newer players into the genre, right?
But I feel like what you're really describing is like attention span, which of course, yeah, fair enough. I mean, the
Yeah.
attention span of us Zoomers is really.
Bringing up League of Legends.
Okay.
Remember season 1 when there were no roles? People were just doing whatever they wanted.
Yeah, I mean
Like,
that's natural. For
we
an
do
early
not
meta.
have that anymore. Modern fighting games kind of do not have that. Game state doesn't exist for games in general anymore, right?
Yeah.
Where season 1 League of Legends, you had three people mid lane, and then like one on the. There was no like established jungle bot duo support, right? People were like doing whatever they wanted, and then they optimized the game. Like they played enough games, and then it got optimized. And then the roles that we see nowadays are like clapped what had like the higher win rate or whatever, and then like the game started to revolve around that, right? So like, I feel like that's like a big thing that modern fighting games kind of lost, like as the internet became a thing, and like you just search up all the information became accessible, right? You just don't have that like period where just people are just playing the game, right? Like season 1 league, they're playing the game, losing and not caring, right? Like there was no like thing people were striving for, right? Like when I sit down and when I play a fighting game, like nowadays, I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do, right? I need to learn this BNB and do the XYZ or something. I'm not just like, oh, I'm gonna play this fighting game and just play the game, right? I'm like thinking about, oh, I need to like, there's this idea of that I need to get better when I'm playing the fighting game versus I'm just gonna play the fighting game because I have fun, like I just enjoy the fighting game. You guys kind of get what I'm saying?
Okay, so help correct me if this is a bit off the mark. Basically, and I'm jumping some steps here because I want to continue driving the conversation. A lot of these games, people just want to hop in and play, and then okay, we can figure out the meta game and the optimal strategies as we go, especially if the game is early on. So in that regard, is that why we're seeing these games so dumbed down and simple? Because the devs are trying to push people into having the fun right off the bat, or do you feel like that's not even the factor? Those two aren't even related, and devs are just making the game simpler just to increase sales, or are these things related? Like, are all these things tied together in terms of the direction of gameplay and modern fighting games?
I would say they're tied together because obviously when you remove something, when you remove options, you don't have to think about balancing anymore, right? And I mean, well, I wouldn't say you don't have to think about it anymore, but it's easier than to keep tuning around that, and also having less kit like gutter characters in Strive would make it easier for newer players to learn the characters that will interest them, instead of getting intimidated by, for example, like Angel and KOF, right?
Okay, here's the thing. What Retro described in terms of players figuring out the game, that takes time. At least, ideally, that takes time. Nowadays, the time might be shortened, right? Because these games are being made simpler. So, is this something that we want to keep seeing, though? Do we really? And Retro, feel free to correct me on this, but is this really something we want for fighting games 2 to 3 years down the line where we shorten the amount of time or shorten the available options that people can start to figure out how to play the game, which makes it such that the game potentially has a shorter lifespan, or even, you know, how games are being pushed as esports 1 month in, shortens the amount of interest people have in the esports. Like, is this something? Is this something
I think-
you want to see? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If you want to access the casual player base, you have to make it so that your game is being played without the idea of getting better, in my opinion.
Interesting.
Like, because I think, like, you want to get better, like, naturally. Like, I play the game not to get better, but I will get better as a result of playing the game. More so. Like,
Yeah,
when you play a single player game, I'm not thinking, oh, I got to be better at this single player game. When I played Octopath Traveler, I was trash. But, like, when I proceeded through the game, I wasn't thinking I need to get better at Octopath Traveler. I'm just playing Octopath Traveler, and then I got better. And then now, like, my team is like, I know how to play my team, and I can defeat, like, whatever PvE is in Octopath Traveler, right? Like, I think that's the hidden secret sauce that fighting games need to actually be, like, successful. I think Strive did it very well, somehow. I don't know how Strive did it, but a lot of players just jumped into Strive, and I feel like their enjoyment was increased because I'm gonna make an assumption here, but I feel like people, when you don't feel like you have to get better, you enjoy the game more. For most people, I'm gonna fill in words for people, but I say the casual audience enjoys games more when they're not thinking about getting better or, like, trying to improve on something.
Oh,
Like-
here's the thing. That ties into the you need to have a reasonably sized player base, because there needs to be people of all skill levels to actually find and play with. And as time passes on, you're gonna have a harder and harder time finding people of that skill level, of, like, a new player's skill level.
Yeah, which is what Rick Jace pointed out earlier.
Yeah, it's
when
like-
yeah.
At some point, like, if someone new picked up CF when rollback dropped, it's like, buddy, good luck. Hopefully all
Yeah.
the other new players that came in,
Yeah, they're not gonna have a good time.
yeah, like, hopefully you get matched with other people that just picked up the game, because there was an influx of new players when rollback came.
Well,
But
fighting games
chances
aren't really
are you're
thinking
going
about
to
that,
get
right?
destroyed a lot.
Fighting game developers aren't really thinking about that, so there is no pathway for new players unless they, like.
Well,
I mean, how do
it's,
you?
it's really about the balance between, like, lowering the skill floor, like, low enough to bring in new players while maintaining the same height of the skill ceiling that veteran players and pro players will still feel the thrill and an excitement to hang on to those ceilings, you know.
But isn't really what he's saying is it's got to be fun without feeling like you have to be in the mindset of getting good? I think that's what Red Rage is trying to say. Like,
But,
the-
like,
Yeah, that
you know,
is
I
what-
understand I understand that's what he means, but, like, if it has to feel good to play, first of all.
yeah,
But,
agree.
like, if I'm just jumping into a game and I get decimated by, like, some top player, I'm like, that's not fun. And then I get into another game, I get decimated again. I didn't really get to do anything. That's not fun. Like, at what point? Like, yeah, sure, going on training mode and, like, pressing a button feel nice, but if I can't actually apply pressing that button a match, how will I actually have fun?
Okay, Rizwan, I'm gonna drop a bomb here. This is a take that I don't think is too controversial given some of the people that are in this call. I think fighting games can be fun when you get decimated, but I think the reason why a lot of these games don't feel fun when you get bodied is because these games are actually not good. I've started to join the church of fighting games suck, and this is not just modern fighting games. I think fighting games as a whole, especially ever since, like, let's say Super Turbo, because that's where fighting games supposedly got all of their concepts from, right? But I think the fighting game genre does a very poor job at making the game feel fun no matter what your mindset is. Like, a lot of people go into, let's think of some of these indie games, Transistor, right? People went into that game in Hades having a ton of fun without being good. But if you actually manage to get good at, like, Hades, it's even more fun, like somehow. And it's I personally think it's not even worth like getting better at that game because you can still enjoy it without having to have as much playtime or even thinking about getting better. And then you move off the single player games or the games of that type, and you go into some of these esports games where I think people always say all the time for Counter-Strike Global Offensive that anytime you get like, let's say like a headshot with the Desert Eagle, it feels good because like no matter against what player it is, it feels like you did something cool. Even if you always just get destroyed every single round, at least you can do something cool and it feels fun enough at that level. Now, there's something to be said about that game where it's not fun because, you can consistently still get just beaten up and it's always frustrating. That's why the player base is so toxic, yada, yada. But I think fighting games as a whole, there are very few fighting games where it's actually fun to have a very like free mindset, where you just go and mash buttons or something. Even, I think this was what was talked about for Tekken 7. Like it's got to be fun while button mashing as well, which is very hard to do, of course, from the early design process of the fighting game. But I do want to drop that bomb and say that like I do think the genre is poor for that reason, and that's probably where Retroage was getting at earlier. It might have been missed, but do you guys think that is the problem, and what do you think inherently makes it such that we have this issue where you got to get, you got to meet this sort of prerequisite in order to have the fun?
There's just a lot you have to learn as a new person.
Okay.
I kind of want to bring up, might not 100% like deal with this topic at hand, but a lot of people don't play fighting games for the actual fighting game. Like just some people just really play it for like the story mode and the cosmetics, and that's it. But
Yeah,
I think,
like a lot of players for MK actually. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna bring up MK again. Sorry if I bring up that game a lot, but I feel like it does a lot of things right where this debate almost wouldn't even need to exist if every other fighting game kind of did it. But MK is really good at like 11 especially. It's probably the best game that carrot on a sticks you to becoming a better player. They attach like skins and like announcer packs to like different tutorials. Each character specific tutorial you do in the game gives you a new skin for that character. I don't think any other game that I know does that. Which I think that's a really cool idea. Just like attaching
I think there has to be an understanding where developers have to understand who their audience is. Because BlazBlue, I love BlazBlue. I really do. That thing can throw a million different things for free at me. I love it, whatever. But most people are not going to get into BlazBlue because they're going to see the anime. Be like, I'm turned off on the anime. Devs have to understand what is their audience.
Like, bringing up okay, I agree with like the audience part, but like for NRS, I actually bought MK11 only for the story. I was never planning to like get like improve or anything. Like I literally just bought it to play the story, and that's it. And I had fun playing the game. I actually had fun playing because I wasn't thinking about in the story mode. I was like, do I have to get better? Do I have to know combos? I was like, I'll learn a combo if I can. But like, there wasn't this endearing thing behind me saying, you need to get better to play the game, right? Like, I think, okay, if we want to talk about meta gaming, like outside of just the video, what the video game developers can do themselves, there's a stigma on fighting games. There's a stigma on games in general, and then there's another stigma on fighting games, right? And like, until this stigma is like, I'm not sure if it's ever possible to remove it. Until the stigma of fighting games being like, and there's a reason why the stigma exists, don't get me wrong, but like, until the stigma of like, I need to get good, or this get good mentality, like, is removed, you don't see Hades having a get good mentality. Right, I don't see exactly. Octopath Traveler having a get good mentality.
Because you don't need to get good at Hades.
What? No, that's what I said, exactly, right? There's no mentality of that, and that's why these other games, fundamentally, that's why these other games is able to bring in players across from different genres everywhere, right? Fighting game players really only bring in masochists, like literally, actually. Like, they're only bringing people facts. Who have such a high tolerance for trash. I don't want to meme on the entire FGC, but like, I really think that fighting games bring in people that have such high tolerance to suffering that like, we're just we're just a different breed. Like actually, like I'm like barely in the FGC. Like I just
Okay,
like
yeah.
I
How do
barely
you?
touched it. Like
Then,
I'm like
then,
I have
then
I have a question for. How do you take away that mentality? Because like, you can only do so much by pressing like, knowing that this is punch, this is kick, this is like your sword attack. There's only so much you could do. But like, how will that? At what point will you figure out like, you see someone else doing all this stuff and you're like, okay, I'm getting destroyed.
you
But
need
like,
okay. My
like,
my theoretical solution
how do you fix that for a new person? That's my question.
is you build a good single player game first. That's what you do first, and
How do
then you
okay.
add in the verses.
How
That
do you make a good single player in a fight?
Well, that's for the geniuses at Capcom
Bruh.
and
yeah, that's the $1 million
SNK to
question,
figure
right?
out.
Yeah, like
Dude, the
I'm
Death
trying.
Fighting's Herd is a great story mode. I've enjoyed it. I didn't even think about getting good. I just
Okay,
played the story mode.
but no one's gonna
and, like,
play
that's a
that
good
game.
example. But like they have to do it. Like they have to. I don't know. They just have to put effort. If you guys play Dem's Fight, I recommend
Why
you
do
guys
we-
purchase Dem's
Why do
Fighting
we
Herd. Like
always
it's hard
put
to put in words.
Why do we always put everything on to the developers when there has to be an equal amount of time and investment from the player? Like,
Amen.
they have to want to do it.
Well,
I'm not forcing someone to
But,
play
like,
Hades.
I'm not
they have
gonna
to
play,
want
like-
to play Hades.
Well,
You're right.
that is on the developers because putting all the skills, technicalities, mechanics, and competitiveness of fighting games aside, it's up to the developers to create a character that would tick the check marks for many different players, right? So it's basically their target audience. Like when I originally picked up KOF 13. I thought it was hard. I couldn't do any combos, right? But I kept on playing the women's teams because of quote unquote reasons, right? And I'm not
I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit it, and it was fun, and even though I sucked at it, I kept on going, and so I think in that aspect, that's what developers really need to think about, and to which I think. So far, games like Strive and games like Strive are doing really well.
Okay, let's talk about Strive in a sec. Let me make some comments on here that were made by the viewers. So from EGP, before the pandemic, fighting game developers had no idea why fighting games are good and did a lot of stuff to take away a lot of what we like. After the pandemic, they realized why no one plays them, and now they are much, much better. I don't know about that. I'm sorry. The things devs focused on were accessibility and simplification. Now we see SF6, Tekken 8, and Grand Blue Rising, which are actually adding more mechanics, and SF6 and Grand Blue Rising have rollback, and everyone expects that. Online features of fighting games are so lacking compared to basically any multiplayer game nowadays. As much as we hate or love simplification, I really don't think that matters when half our games still barely function for full price. EGP, if you're listening, I would like to hear more. Don't stop yourself. We'll read as much as you have.
I agree.
And yeah, sorry. Before you comment that, another comment from D Blizzard from the stream chat. Listen, boys. The truth is, ain't nobody casual gonna be grinding Exard for 50 hours to be goated and take a game off of intermediate player. So making the game simpler just so people can feel like they're learning or able to have fun should be encouraged. Grand Blue Versus is a good example of it, done well, emo, and Exard is a solid middle ground.
At what point is taking away and making a game simpler too simple? Like, for different people, that's very different things. It's like, okay, I enjoy the simplicity of Grand Blue Versus, but I really love the complexity of Blaze Blue and Guilty Gear.
Right.
So
I
at
think
what-
Street Fighter
how-
6 is a perfect example of what we're talking about. I disagree with EGB saying like, oh, things are his general saying like after the pandemic fighting. I don't agree with that, but I agree with him expand. I'd like to hear more from that. But like, I think Street Fighter 6's drive system is really simple. It's like the most simple, non-simple mechanic to like, and I think it's genius. I think it's beautiful, and I think that's what fighting games need. Like drive system has a lot of nuance, but on the onset is very simple. Green drive cancel, you're plus on your normal plus like +4 frame, right? That's all it does. And then you use your drive meter to do this green thing or the parry. It's so on the onset it's so simple, but it creates so much nuance, right? In Street Fighter 6. And that's what fighting games need. They need something that's simple but makes it complex. Like for Guilty Gear XR, they have all these complicated mechanics, right? Like I would say they're complicated from like my perspective as like the kind of a newish fighting game player that I didn't play all the old stuff. But like when I look at Guilty Gear's list of mechanics, I'm like, and those create nuance. Don't get me wrong, they create a lot of nuance. But like they're complicated on the onset. Like when I look at that, it's complicated, right? Like versus the drive system for Street Fighter, like this new drive system, very clean, very simple. And
I just want games. I just want there to be games of all types.
Yes.
But right now, it seems we're all moving towards one type.
Yes.
I think there was one of my friends put it the best. He said, "I just want to play Guilty. I just want to play anime. Everyone's trying to become Street Fighter."
Wait, you could play, and there's games already in the past that are like, and you could play.
But we
In the
want
past.
new. Yeah, in the past, we want new stuff.
So do you want like a new Blaze Blue Central Fiction that just carries over all the things? Like what new?
I would actually,
Yeah.
yes, I
Okay.
would
Why wouldn't
like
I?
that.
Retro Rage. Okay, here's the thing about this. When you see a game get released again, this was the case for Virtua Fighter Ultimate Showdown. The ability to get your game visibility again is a huge deal because people are legit just short-term memory, like, you know, bandwagoners all over the place, right? Whatever. We don't want to criticize that. Like that's going to be the way
Persona
it
4
is.
Ultimax Arena died on the spot when it got re-released.
Yeah,
I
because
don't-
clearly people don't like that game. That's just the way it is.
No, everyone was
Okay.
telling, "Oh, Blaze Blue
Persona
Persona
4.
4." That game died on the drive. It got released and it died immediately.
Well,
I don't
okay,
wanna
the
be
truth
like,
showed
okay,
itself
well-
there. Go ahead.
So, well, okay.
Wait, which
What do you
game?
define
I
as
wasn't.
dying?
Sorry, I was.
What do
I
you
zoned
mean
out.
by
For you.
dying? Because there's still, I still
okay.
personally know tons of people that are playing it. I know there are still tourneys being held for it. Like, the biggest issue Persona had on release was no rollback.
Okay, I guess it solved the problem of no rollback, but it certainly there was no new. In my opinion, I'm sure there was like maybe one or two, but there was no new player. That was just it was. I guess that was the purpose. It was made for the old players for the rollback, right? But like,
Like, I
know
just
what I'm
want
saying?
a new, like, when Guilty Gear Strive was out, I was super excited. I was super hyped. And then I played it, and then all my hype died because I was like, this is nothing like XX or Xer.
Yeah, let's
But
talk
like-
about Stripe.
Me.
Let's talk about Stripe. Let's talk about
plus
Stripe.
loss ratio. Maybe they lost you, but they plus like for every one loss of like a veteran player, they had 5,000 new players
Yeah,
get introduced
exactly.
to
Arxis
Guilty
knows
Gear.
this and they don't care. This is
Yeah.
exactly what they want. They've
Yeah,
said this to
exactly.
the
Yeah,
developer
and
backyard.
I
So
don't
while-
like I don't want more. I want more mechanics. I want there to be more stuff to do in my game other than what I've learned within the first year, and that's what I'm just having to hold with.
Okay, guys, this is probably a hot take. I think Strive is a dangerous non sequitur that a lot of us get baited into. And what really allowed it to succeed was being the first of its kind, that being a rollback of the modern era game, and also just being very lucky with social media, all of the phenomenons with Jacko poses and Baiken being Baiken. They doubled down on that, though, and they knew exactly what they needed to do to boost the popularity even more. They worked on the visuals. That's obviously going to help a lot, and people already knew Arxie's reputation with having great anime style visuals.
Yeah, Dragon Ball really like pushed them there.
Yes. Yeah, and you know we don't want to get the wrong idea on why Strive succeeded. Is basically what I'm saying. So do you guys feel like, and of course you guys just give your thoughts on this. Do you feel like Strive
Like-
succeeded for other reasons than its gameplay? Is basically what I'm trying to ask you guys.
Yeah, like literally, I think if Strive had Exer's gameplay, but all the other pluses that you just mentioned, I still think it would have been just as.
I disagree. Hard disagree there. I've never played Xrd and I already hard disagree.
You
The simplified Roman cancel is like the drive system.
you know
That's
how
better
easy, dude? Roman cancels in Exer are easier than they are in Strive. I'm not joking when I say this. It's the one thing Strive did harder than Exer.
But like I don't know, but then okay. Let me rephrase this. Why do I feel like when I saw Exart in the past, and I thought, dang, this game's so complicated, right? But when I looked at Strive, I thought, dang, this game's so simple.
I think you're in
And
the
then-
minority there. Go ahead.
Oh, actually?
Well, okay. Here's the.
bec-
Here, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
basically, I think people didn't really know what Guilty Gear was like before Strive. If you had to ask people about like exclusive characters from Exart, there's actually this stream that was from a Smash event. People asked like where these characters were from. If they weren't from a previous, if they weren't in Strive, let's say they're from a previous Guilty Gear, people didn't know who that character was. I think that says a lot already. Like people didn't really care about the differences between Exart and Strive in terms of that being the factor of getting them into the game. It was more so just the phenomenons and the fact that it had already the exposure, and then of course when they actually played it, it felt good enough to get good at, I guess. So, do you think that's, I personally don't think it's relevant that Exard was a little harder than Strive in terms of getting new people into it. Like people didn't really care at all. Yeah, go ahead.
Difficulty matters so little in the grand scheme of things. Like, you know how hard it is to actually like play League of Legends? I genuinely think League is hard.
Yeah.
Like, difficulty does not matter. If the game appeals to you and it comes out at the right time, it's gonna build a hell of an audience.
Okay. So, wait. So when you say League of Legends is hard, do you mean like you're just losing? You're getting like stomped in lane or something, or do you mean like it's like hard to do things in League of Legends? Because there's a big difference.
I mean, it's very hard to improve, particularly in League.
So when
I
so you're
agree.
talking about improvement, which implies that you want to like beat another player, right? You're not like talking about, oh, it's hard to move in League of Legends. It's hard.
I think
to
it is hard to move in
attack
League of
minions
Legends.
in
I
League
think
of
it is.
Legends.
It is.
I think
yeah.
movement in League of Legends is very hard.
I feel like it can be the equivalent of KBD, at least in my personal experience.
Okay.
It depends on the level you're playing at. It is a
There
very
you go,
accessible
bingo.
game.
I think
Bingo.
I think movement in a lot of FPS games is very difficult too. I think playing Fortnite is very difficult.
Fortnite.
It's really just perspective. You
Well,
can't. You gotta stop
I
comparing
think
apples and oranges.
I think
Like, I still
Kuroshi-
have fun playing them, but like I still think they're difficult.
I just want to point out that Kuroshi actually raised a really interesting point about how the skill gap in Strive isn't really what made it successful. Because we have to think about how, like in modern day, especially for video games, advertisements through influencers and good players are so important now. So what actually appeals to them and through their viewers is more important than anything else, right? So that's why that's why in Tekken 8, Harada said they wanted to make it more aggressive, because more aggressive in general just means that it will keep people more interested, right? Which is also the original the starting point from for Street Fighter 5, what Capcom had in mind. But little did they know, at a very high level, Street Fighter 5 is actually a very slow-paced game.
Yeah.
So
great.
are you saying
Okay,
like
okay.
that the games need to be like aggressive? Like well
Ooh,
that
oh,
you're
okay,
certainly
okay.
right. Sam Show is a dead game. And that game is very defensive.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just the viewership experience in modern days. As much as how some of us would hate to admit it, but viewership experience is really important now, especially nowadays because of the influencers, right? And people don't watch TVs anymore, and people don't really go to another person's house to play games anymore, and arcade is dead pretty much, and so yeah, it's just how it is. More people are going to pick up a game because Maximilian Deep likes it and chills for it than just through the words of mouth of your friend actually.
So are you saying like, okay, the influencers are being so are you saying like, oh, Maximilian dude would be paid and to say something good about it, or does he actually genuinely have to say it's good before, or do you think that even matters, like that?
I don't think he Well, if you're talking about Max, he's kind of a unique example. I don't think he will actually take money and say something that's good. It really depends on from influencers to influencers. But what I'm just saying, like in broad spectrum, right? You have to make your game appeal to like at least at first impression looks appealing enough for people to pick it up, right? And to think how it's hype. If we look at Tekken 7, right? Tekken 7 from like 2020 to 2022, which is pretty much during the height of the pandemic, right? Tekken 7 nearly doubled its sales from 5 million to 9 million copies. Okay, and it's sold 1 million more units than Street Fighter 5, and I personally believe one of the biggest reasons that happened is because everyone stay at home, right? And but around that time, streamers like Ares, for some reason, other big names. I don't know if you guys have heard of these streamers before, but streamers like Moon, XQC, and Forsen, they picked up Tekken 7 for some reason. I think it's because of Ares, right? And so I feel like a lot of Tekken 7's success has to attribute to these influencers.
Okay. Do you think it also because Tekken 7 goes on sale for like $6? So on top of the influencer.
No, but like no, he's talking release. He's talking way further back. This is way before those sales.
Yeah, I mean discounts obviously help, right? I mean that's just a very general tactic that developers use. So yeah, so then again, I just want to put an emphasis on how making the game look more appealing through so for Tekken 8, like more aggressive, right? It's really important because otherwise it's gonna it's just gonna not interest people. So for example, in EVO 2022, the grand final for Tekken 7, right? A lot of people thought it was a snooze fest because Knee plays very defensively, right? So if that grand final put veterans to sleep and spectators to sleep, what makes you think the casuals are going to think, right?
Wait. So, how aggressive does a fighting game have to be? Because every Guilty Gear, including Strive, are very aggressive game. Like Guilty Gear, like encourages you to be aggressive, because that's how the system works.
Mm-hmm.
So, how aggressive should the game be? Because I consider Guilty Gear very aggressive. It's still not Tekken level. It's still not Street Fighter level in popularity.
How would I put this? It's obviously Strive is a slower game, and Strive has removed a lot of defensive options like blitz shields, blitz attack, and your alpha counters. Oh, I think it's called Dead Angle and
Dead Angle got replaced with YRC.
Yeah, YRC. YRC is now and it's
how aggressive should a fighting game?
As aggressive as it can be without being at the level of Marvel versus Capcom. That's my take.
Ooh, okay.
But why does that game have so many games?
Yeah,
that's a very specific benchmark. I do want to. I'm glad you brought up aggression because I do want to talk about Tekken 8. I think this is a great time to talk about Tekken 8. What we've heard about this game so far, they are driving forward this narrative of aggression so hard, guys. Like, I do not feel comfortable about it. Not because of the word aggression necessarily, but by the fact that they feel the need to make this like the central conversation point for their marketing right now. Like, do you feel like this is gonna retain the current, happy Tekken players?
Do you have a Tekken player in chat?
We've got EGP. Okay, EGP, come in.
You can actually invite him in. Yeah.
You can come in for this.
Yeah. So before he gets in, I like to point out that Tekken 8's new system, putting all the aggression that they're Harada's putting emphasis on the side, a lot of people said that in the trailers they showed very low movements, and I just like to point out that in the past, a lot of people complain about Tekken 7's netcode, right? Despite being rollback. Harada specifically pointed this out in one of his talk in Harada Bar. He said for games for 3D fighters like Tekken, rollback is actually very hard to implement in a game like that. Because when you do a forward movement, there are so many different things you can do in a game like Tekken that it will be hard for the netcode to predict and to roll back to like different states. So that's why they had to cap it at like 3 frames or something. So what I'm thinking is the change that they're bringing to Tekken 8 probably has to complement with is something that has to complement with the netcode.
I mean, what he's saying is 100% bullshit.
Okay, EGP, what's up?
So
What do you
what
got?
he's talking about, he words it very bad every time he's asked that question. Basically, I think he's talking about like this CPU speed, and because rollback does actually have like it's harder to run rollback compared to delay based according like to just CPU speed in general. So what he's saying is the game's gonna run like crap if we increase the rollback, but didn't like compensate for other things, right? So
I think
they're
he said
gonna have
it would.
to optimize the game because the problem is that like the PS4 runs worse online than the PC version just because the PS4 is just less powerful. That's kind of what the problem kind of boils down to, basically. Now, yeah, everyone's wondering like, oh, are we gonna have good netcode because Arika's helping out? We don't know what it is. They say it's online battle algorithms, but that could be anything, right? That could be matchmaking, right? So, who knows?
Are we talking about Tekken 8 right now?
Yeah, and then did y'all want me to talk about the aggression kind of thing?
Yes, please talk.
Okay.
You're the Tekken guy here. Please go for it.
Okay. So basically, their whole marketing like thing and their whole theme of the game is aggression and trying to make the game as aggressive as possible. Now, like every competitive Tekken player, everyone is freaking out because we're all on the same page actually. We have not seen a lot of defensive mechanics, and we're worried because I think it's not that hard to figure out. Like if you make a game with a lot of aggression, right? And very little defense, it kind of becomes kind of meaningless, right? I mean, there's games for that, right? Like Marvel, like obviously the most aggressive like fighting game ever, and that's like kind of why you play it, right? But Tekken, like we love our movement, we love the 3D aspect, we love like all the frame data knowledge, and if they don't implement it correctly, we might just end up with like a game where all the mechanics just kind of got shit on, right? Because it's just so aggressive. Who cares, right? Yeah, that's why like everyone like freaks out when we see a sidestep in a trailer, right? Because it's like, oh, is it gonna be good or is it gonna be bad? Just because that's movement is just the main defensive option in Tekken.
I have a quick question about Tekken actually for you regarding 8 anyway. Like, how exactly are they making it more aggressive? Like, I've seen the videos and I've heard the explanation. Exactly how are they making it more aggressive? Because, like, I imagine Korean backdashing is still going to be in the game. So, like, people are still going to try to keep space away and then properly, like, try to still play safer.
If you want to get technical, they have not shown Korean backdashing. I assume it's going to be
But
in the
they really
game,
take it out? It feels like that's just, like, a staple, serious thing at
They
this
barely showed any movement from
Yeah,
the
like...
clips.
I mean,
we've
have
only
they
seen
showed
2
ABD in
sidesteps.
old trailers, in Tekken 7
No.
trailers?
We're waiting for the Evo Japan beta alpha to see like how a lot of the mechanics work because they're hiding a lot of that shit actually.
Okay,
Yeah,
you guys have to
I-
understand. They could have shown this. They could have shown this, right, to
Yeah.
make people feel a bit more comforted, but they
Yeah, but-
explicitly chose not to.
Yeah,
What
so-
do you
but-
think they're cooking?
Yeah, so just to answer Mega's question earlier, I think the heat system that they're implementing lets you chip your opponents on the head, right? On any move, right?
There's
so
damage, so yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
naturally that's the aggression that
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and Tekken's never had chip before, right?
Yeah, and then like a lot of the they like once you cancel stuff out of heat with like I forgot what it's called, heat rush, you're gonna be like massively plus on block, and so you'll be able to do more aggressive mix-ups. And then with heat, you're able to get pretty easy combo confirms as well. Because you actually get a bound off it, which they brought it back from like I believe Tag 2. And also, it seems like you can screw up the wall, which was actually a big change because our combo extension, which was the was it Tailspin? It's also called Screw. You weren't able to do it at wall. Now you can extend it out. It seems like you can extend it at wall, so it's going to be like more aggressive in that sense. Bigger damage, more room for mix-ups, and then chip damage on top of that. So that's kind of where they're going with that.
So it's kind of like a one-touch game, almost. You would say it's approaching one-touch game.
Kind of. We don't really know for sure. But it does feel like you could definitely get a lot of momentum and win off like 3 interactions if you really could. But again, it's so hard to tell. They don't really show us a lot of health bars either. So like we saw one Paul combo and it did like okay damage, but you know that's like a developer combo, right? They don't really know how to make combos.
Okay, EGP. I want to bring up something you yourself said back when this conversation first arose, and this was also, of course, what inspired this episode. I quote, "Aggression only works if you have good defensive mechanics. Otherwise, it loses substance." And I want to, preface this with the fact that I do agree with that. But I want to ask why you said that, because, in my mind, like the reason why developers would even mention aggression as being the central component of the gameplay is that they want to increase the spectator excitement, which I feel like Tekken 7 already had a great deal of, right? And I don't know why they would, change what worked, but what do I know? I'm not a Tekken player. I want to hear what you think.
Okay, just for like in terms of Tekken, like all the Tekken fans were actually like kind of all the people I talked to, they were actually really hyped that Nee won, and they wanted him to win actually, because of like the storyline of like, oh, he never won an Evo for 7, and he's been playing all these years. Plus, like he's the only one of the few players still playing a non-DLC, non-2D character, because that's kind of a huge thing. Like the DLC is really good in Tekken, and then it's also like.
Wait, is Akuma confirmed for Tekken 8?
Not yet.
No, I don't think so. And given how strong 2D characters has performed, I really think Banco has to think about introducing any more 2D characters.
Yeah, they actually said that 2D characters are pretty unpopular, actually. It's just when you see tournaments, a lot of people are going to pick them, right? Because they're the better characters in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the statement about, like, freaking aggression without defense. A lot of, like, plus R, when I was getting a plus R, a lot of players would say, oh, universal defense mechanics, that's, like, the big thing about Guilty Gear, right? That kind of makes it Guilty Gear. And I didn't know if it's true or not. And then after like playing Guilty Gear for a long time, after playing Plus R for like since the rollback update, I kind of realized that yeah, this is and I'm also like pretty disappointed in like Tekken 7's like movement. Like if you play an older Tekken game, the movement is just like by far better than Tekken 7's.
This is just a thing in just newer fighting games where they're trying to take away movement options because it's easier for both spectators and players and everyone to track. So you're just having less and less ways to really get around the screen a lot of times.
Okay, you say
this isn't just a Tekken thing. This is just like a lot of games now.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Rizwan, because maybe we can use this as a transition point to Project L. Project L seems to be, at least what we've seen so far, incorporating very strong movement options. Of course, we just still don't know a lot about the game, but they weren't afraid to show that you can move around the screen. Although, admittedly, it was pretty easy to follow when they showed it. So, perhaps that's a difference maker there. Is that?
I can't say because we haven't tried it yet. Like
yeah.
Being able to if I see DNF, I'm like, oh, they look like they're smoothing. But when I actually play DNF, I am not smoothing. This feels terrible.
Agreed.
I actually like, despite I have some gripes about tag fighters, I actually like what I see from Project L so far, because you know, because they have developers from you know, games like Power Ranger, and there are devs in there that really like MVCI. Those are really fast games, but in comparison, Project O is a lot. It's probably, I would say probably like in the middle, like between your usual like 1v1 fighters and to something like MVC. It's really, it's slowed down to a point that I think it's comprehensible for people to enjoy.
I think it's designed with esports in mind. So
Yep,
like the viewer.
MVCI was
What a
absolutely
shocker.
designed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Riot Games, right? So of course. they're
Yeah,
designed
so-
for esports. But like, yeah, from what I've seen, I agree as well. It's like in the middle ground of like stuff. And Echo's got a 4-way schmicks. They showed it on the trailer. You can do it.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe we need to revisit this one, Project L, that is, because there's still a lot that we know.
I
about
The
think-
it.
fact that it's going to be free is, I think, going to be a big. Like,
Oh yeah, that's gonna be huge.
huge-
Yep.
No, it's gonna be big for a few reasons. It's gonna be free. It's from a developer that almost everyone who's ever touched a video game knows. They're like, Riot's releasing a new game after so long. Like, hell yeah, I'm gonna try it. That's it. Just
Sure.
those two things are going to expand it. And then there's so many people that just stream Riot games that are big streamers. Everyone's gonna jump on this. And then however long that
Ooh,
audience is gonna
actually-
last is gonna be whatever.
You know,
We
when
have
the
a
when
example of that in Legends of Runeterra.
Yes.
And it's
Retro,
kinda-
you're a bit quiet right now.
Sorry, we have an example of that in Legends of Runeterra, and that kind of is kind of not doing good. So like,
There's another example. Like, if you're hoping like Project L's the big esports game that's gonna change everything, Multiverses didn't do super well.
Okay, there's a lot of reasons why I think. Okay, I played Multiverse. Have you guys played Multiverses? Like a
Yes.
good
No.
amount?
Well, I wouldn't say a good amount, but I've played like maybe 20, 30 hours.
It feels bad. And not only does it feel bad, like if you watch a tournament, have you guys watched any tournaments?
No.
No.
nope.
It looks bad. Like
Well, there you go. Gameplay matters.
Like,
just watch one tournament. It's like so cringe, man. Like imagine like Game and Watch camping, right? But like, not only can you not see anything that like it's so it's the movement is weirdly so it's fast, but it's also like because okay, I don't. It's 2v2, right? And it's like a platformer fighter. But for some reason, I cannot comprehend anything that's going on. Unlike like even when I watch doubles in Smash, like okay, this is going a bit off topic. Well, I'll just end it there. Multiverses very sus, like in terms of how the game feels and how it looks from a viewer perspective.
For me personally, I think Multiverses and Project L actually have a lot of similarities that people aren't pointing out. Like obviously rollback, and then they also what's it called? What is it again? They have like big franchises going for them, right? Like Warner Bros. And then the league is pretty big nowadays. And then also like it's gonna be free to play online. Obviously, the rollback is gonna be nice for Project L. We know that. But like yeah, maybe it being a fighting game might hurt it. Just because again, people are scared of fighting games.
Well, personally for me, for Multiverse, I actually got into the beta, but one of the closed betas, I think. But I never actually played it because for me, for the game like Multiverse, the blend of all these different characters, they don't make sense to me. When you look at a game like Smash, right? All these different characters, you know, they're attached to people like differently, and a lot of people have played. You know, if you have played Pokemon, you most likely have played Fire Emblem and etc. Right? But for Multiverse, it's like you have a character from like Batman, and then another character from Game of Thrones. How does that, you know? Yeah, these are like extremely popular IP, but how do they connect together? You know, do they make sense together?
Okay, I think
But
we're
that's
grasping at
implied in the
straws.
name, right?
You
It's
could say
no-
like, oh, Bayonetta and Mario.
Yeah, I was gonna
don't
say
fit
Bayonetta
in
doesn't fit at all in Smash. Yeah.
and these IPs are
Yeah,
bigger
but
than
it's still a Nintendo game, right? So
yeah, they're all WBIPs. What's the point?
Actually, how do I put it? It's more likely for someone who owns a Nintendo device to have tried these games altogether compared to the vast universe and IPs that spans across Warner Brothers. That's what
An
I'm trying to
HBO
say.
subscription is all you need to experience almost every character in that roster.
Okay, you
Well,
know,
but yeah,
Warner
but that
Brothers
doesn't mean
isn't a video
most people
game.
are well versed in.
I'm not well versed in any Nintendo game besides like I don't even know. I
okay,
only
guys,
play,
how
like,
about this?
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
feel like
really,
we're
it
not
really
gonna.
doesn't matter.
Sorry to interrupt. I feel like we're not gonna get much of anywhere here. At least with that being the reasoning behind whether Multiverse was successful or not. I think based on what what seems to be have been three of you that agreed on this. At least Retro was the main one that spoke on it. If the gameplay is no good, it's probably a deal breaker for many people. Or if the gameplay isn't any good to some audience, right? Because I haven't seen Multiverses be a #1 hit among any audiences either. So I think we can pretty much leave it at that in regards to Multiverses. That it had all a good IP, it had good netcode and all of that, it had a couple good features, but because the gameplay didn't attach itself to any of the target audiences, it was a flop. So I think if we can agree upon that, let's talk about one more thing before we close off this podcast. It's not really one thing, but I do want to discuss a bit more about one specific thing that might be a factor in terms of where gameplay direction is going, and this is damage. Do you feel like with all of these accessibility changes and like simplification, streamlining gameplay, all of that, do you feel like damage being increased across several fighting games has been helpful or harmful?
Harmful.
Harmful.
I don't think
Harmful unless you're like trying to be crazy. Like if you're like Marvel 3, who cares, right? Everyone got good
Yeah.
damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so it
That's
does.
like a different type of game, though.
Yeah, it depends on the context of the game, but in the vast majority of the games, I find it to be quite harmful. Like in BB Tag, I was perfectly fine with it, but in like fucking
But that's that type of
Strive
game, you know what I
or-
mean?
Yeah, like BB Tag, I like it. Sam Show's always been a very high damage game, so I'm fine with it because that game wants you to be very defensive and careful. Like, and then like KOF, you always have like those very good, actually very good damaging combos with 1-2 bar starters.
So are you guys saying that you would prefer something like the Gut system?
No, I'm actually not a fan of Guts.
Well, Guts is immediately like confusing for a spectator. Let's just be real, because the health bar is not actually like
Representative.
real.
yeah, exactly. So it's like automatically like a no for esports, right? Yet Guilty Gear still has it because of
It's legacy.
legacy, and also it's trying to manufacture hype. I think like with regards to comebacks, we saw that a lot with Strive. To make okay, let me not go there. I have to stop myself. Damage, right? The reason I brought this up is because a lot of older games have less damage per hit, which means that in order to get the damage, in order to get the reward for the stuff that you improved upon, you had to work for it. Like you had to improve upon it as a separate component of your gameplay. Like to put it simply, you have to lap combos. Whereas in the modern games, because combos aren't being labbed as a focus, you can just learn whatever bread and butter that high level players are using. Like go ahead.
I think what you're really looking for is how many interactions you want to have.
I was about to say that.
before you reach it. So
Yes.
the amount of interactions that we are having as more and more fighting games come out feels like there's less and less, which makes them feel worse.
Yes, there you go. Okay, you got to exactly why I even brought this up. How it feels to get hit once does change whether people stick with it or not. So yes, go ahead.
So it's like when I play Strive, it's like pre-patch Naguriyuki, I was like, I'm fucking dead. I got hit. Like I just have to accept that that's what happened. Like, okay. But like if I got hit by like Ramathal in like Exert or something, like I knew I was gonna be in a very messed up mix-up situation. But like I didn't feel hopeless. 'Cause she had to mix me up at least like 5-6 times.
I feel that definitely. When I went from Strive to BlazBlue, I noticed that in Strive I could be fucking not even getting hit, but I could be blocking against Naga. I'm like, oh, the round's over. What am I gonna do? But I go to BlazBlue, I'll get like hit by like 4 to 5k damage combo, like it does like a pretty good amount of damage for that game. But I'm like, oh, I still feel like I'm not out of it completely. You know what I mean? Because there's
Like
just
yeah,
more
you have to
interaction.
think about like what the average damage is. Like in Strive, average damage feels around 40 to 50%, which feels very bad. Whereas in traditionally older games, it was more akin to 25 to 35%.
35,
I
yeah.
want to say. So it's like, and then you have to also consider what is the depth of that interaction that got you in that situation. So it's like it feels like there's more of just like it's only this is the right answer of where you messed up versus there was a few things that led to your mess.
I think the worst thing you can do in regards to like having low health in a game, or like everyone does like 2 interactions to win. I think the worst thing you can do is make everyone's damage like the same and good. I feel like newer fighting games don't have as many characters. How do I say this? We see less and less variety between how much damage characters can do. It just feels like everyone does like really good damage, and some characters do more. It feels kind of boring because like I feel like a lot of those interactions are kind of gone.
I can see that.
You know, this is probably where I'll speak the most. And again, feel free to butt in, guys. In KOF, especially the entire series, damage has been consistently high. Like if you learn the combos, you can get a lot of damage off singular interactions. And it wasn't necessarily like long combos. 13 was really the only game, and maybe 11, but those were only games where you could like do long combos for your damage. In the past, it was just like you do crouch, light kick, crouch, light punch, and then super, and that did like 50%, let's say. But because it wasn't a commonplace back then, didn't seem like something that people complained about, especially because it was a mainstay element of the series. Now when we get to KOF 14, where damage is a bit more consistent, not only is it consistent, like you can get off of more types of hits, but you can also get it more consistently because it's just easier to do. That's where we start to see this lack of nuance in terms of landing the combo damage and confirms. But again, it wasn't something that people complain about because it was mainstay portion of the series. So the reason I bring up KOF specifically, now I want to talk about 15 just a little bit. 15 is a game that kept all the elements present of the series, where you're still able to play good old KOF in neutral. You're able to run pressure, which is basically a rock paper scissors trifecta. Like, let's just be real, it's not really anything complex. It's just a matter of whether your opponent plays active defense and how they respond to the options you present to them when you perform your pressure. A lot of that is still present in the game. But now you add on the damage that you're able to get consistently off of a lot of hits. That actually feels like an accessibility element because it allows for new players to have a better understanding of how they can land their combos. It's not like they have to fish for the combos. They can still do it whenever they get those hits because it's consistent, and also it's a little easier because, you know, they made the leniency better, all of that. But that's a separate thing. Point being, because it was present all throughout the series, it doesn't feel as bad, maybe, that they added or kept in the amount of damage that you're able to do. Now, when we talk about KOF in with respect to the genre as a whole, do you guys feel like what has really made this high damage more like more frustrating, because, like, you know, a lot of games are starting to have it now, is really due to the fact that they didn't have before and now they have it? Like, so they're becoming more like every other fighting game, they're becoming more monotonous, hard to differentiate? Or do you feel like it's just overall just doesn't feel good no matter what?
I think you know, for newer games, you know, being high damage a lot of times is indicative of what you did just now. It's cool, or at least seemingly, right? And you know, we're really moving away from like really long combos from like MVC and KOF 13 nowadays. So it, I personally feel it's fine. I actually don't have a problem with how Strive's damage turns out to be as high as it is, and for KOF 15, I also don't feel that it's, you know, unbalanced in any way in terms of how damage are distributed.
Well, do you feel like part of your sentiments around that are because you can interact a lot more still? Because, KOF does have some deep and intricate interactions. Well, also Strive, the fact that the combos aren't super long, but they are high damaging can still lead to some less than positive feelings.
Oh.
Yeah.
So how long you have agency? Oh, go ahead, Bridges.
Okay, I just wanted to say, so, I don't know. I guess it really feels... Maybe... I feel like I've seen videos where the opposite has been said, but at least for me personally, I don't like seeing, like, 3 to 5 hit combos that'll do half my health. I feel like that's really demoralizing. Like, oh, this person, they just have to, like, hit 5 buttons in a row, and they're like... It just ruins, like, I don't know, like, the life lead that I just had, or stuff like that. It's just... Strive, I just really don't like that aspect of Strive.
Yeah,
but...
like I
Okay,
mean,
that's true, but you also have to think that really has to depends on how hard it is to land that 3 or 5 buttons, right? So
Okay, but it's Strive, but you have less movement options to even, like, backdash or whatever. You get the point. But okay, I saw a video where one guy said, like, oh, he prefers it in Strive because it feels like anyone can feel like they can make a comeback, like, much easier. Like, not exactly that, but like, longer combos basically turn off the player more because, like, the combo goes on for so long, it doesn't let them play.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
That's
even
true,
if the combo,
yeah.
even if the combo does less damage, people will still get, like, mind fucked by like just a long combo in general. So even if it does, like, only like 20 to 30%, people just get, like, annoyed because they can't play the game.
Yes, that's exactly
So
where
I
I was
thought there's,
getting
like,
at.
a interesting dichotomy there.
Okay. I think that long combos aren't a problem if they cost something. So one game genre or one series I've never had a problem with, like, is King of Fighters. Like, with all my fighting game hate, like, King of Fighters is a game where, like, even though I'm bad at it, I really don't have much to say. Because, like, even though in King of Fighters 13 there was, like, a long combo, you really had to spend the thing, or for some characters, like, I know, like, so the top tiers you don't really spend anything, but, like, you really had to spend your resources, right? So, like, if they're doing, like, some drive cancel, like, full drive mode thing on, max mode thing on me,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
actually mind, because, like, they've put in
They can only do it, like,
something.
once per game, right? Because
Yeah.
you have 30
Yeah,
characters.
exactly. They put in
And
something, you get the long combo, okay.
Yeah,
But, like,
so it's just a real commitment versus something like MVC. You get touched and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, like, I'm in a long combo with no commitment. Like, they just touched me and now I'm dead, right? Versus King of Fighters, so you had to have drive meter. You had to have meter to beforehand. You had to play the game first before you could one touch me, you know? Like, if you kind of get what I'm saying. Like,
So, Retro Age, I want to draw a parallel. Maybe this will help bring this to light a bit better. And no, I'm not comparing apples to oranges. I'm going to say that right off the bat. Okay. In League, when you start off the game, you have no items. You can do some of your combos, but they won't do as much damage. Now, suddenly, when you get items, when you get your core build, let's say you get your Infinity Edge and your Blade of the Ruined King, whatever, right? That's when you can start doing a lot of damage with few hits. Yasuo is pretty famous. He can just do his core combo and usually kills them in that one sequence. So is that similar to what you're describing, Retro Age, where you have to work for it, like in King of Fighters, whereas in some other games you just have it at level 1? Is that what you're saying?
League of Legends is a hard tie because, like, I'd imagine League of Legends is like a fighting game, like many fighting games happening over the course of one match. Like the level 1 fight, and then, like, the level 20 fight.
Okay.
Are, like, two separate entities, right? So, like, the level 20 or like full build fight is literally the same thing as Marvel versus Capcom. Like,
Okay,
actually,
I hear you.
no
Yeah.
build up. You just Zed
I
ults you. He goes, he does Naruto run. Yomu's ults you, and then you're like, oh, I didn't build, Guardian Angels or, like, Spell Shield. I guess I'm dead now, right? My support, like, I feel like they're separate instances. Like, I don't think that's, like, a good comparison in my
Yeah,
opinion.
Okay, fair enough.
I just like to point something out. When you brought up the Infinity Edge example, but as a player, you did work for it throughout over the course of the game. You through careful planning, laning phase, and winning team fights, you earn that Infinity Edge. So I don't think it's as as
You
free.
think it's a good but, like, I guess you do earn the Infinity Edge. Yeah, that's true.
I think it's really game dependent because, like, at least for the transition from Tag 2 to Tekken 7, like, Tag 2 damage is actually pretty high, but you have 2 characters and the larger health bars and a larger timer, so the game actually takes longer than 7. Meanwhile, in 7, we like the biggest combo damage, like it's Akuma and Geese basically, that are doing these like really long combos and they take forever, and then they also like deplete your health bar like from like zero, like just zero.
Akuma,
Right?
Akuma had
So,
TOD, right?
what was that?
Akuma had TOD, right? But does he still?
He still
Yeah.
does on
Geese
power
and
stage.
Akuma can
Yeah.
do insta kills if they just have the right conditions like rage and walls. But like they both need meter for those, and getting meter is not difficult because you just kind of need to poke and get poked, and that's kind of like Tekken, right? So I feel like it, like again, like I do agree with Kurushi that it does depend on your game and like whether you added it in or not, like later on. And for King of Fighters, I actually like don't have any problems, even though it's technically the same, right? You need a meter to spend in order to get that combo. But in Tekken's case, it's like it's so easy to get meter. It's like a non-factor basically.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's like free, right? It's free. Like the damage is free,
You
kind
just,
of.
yeah, you just have to just wait until you have meter, basically. As long as you're not stupid, right? And intentionally not getting meter, then you're gonna get it.
Okay, all right, I hear you guys. Appreciate that point, EGP. So the reason I brought up damage even in the first place, because this does relate to where I feel like fighting games start to base their philosophies in, which is getting spectators excited. That way they buy the game, they tell their friends about it as well. That's really important because we've talked about this a little bit, or potentially hinted at it, where if the spectators see something that they feel like they could do, then they'll be probably more inclined to buy the game and try it out, and whether they like it or not is from there determined by how well the developers onboard the player. So damage is a big part of that, of course. If it feels like you can do the damage with some amount of work, but the work feels within reasonable reach, then that's a huge
Dang,
selling point.
where are all the Sam Show
But
players at?
a reasonable
I'm
reach
here,
is
I
the
hear
same for all
echoes
their
of
enemies.
silence.
It doesn't matter
Is the same for all what?
for all your enemies. So what's the point?
Oh, can you elaborate on that?
Like you say, oh, making higher damage like more accessible to players. If you're like inspiring like new players, say, oh, I can like that combo doesn't look that hard. I could learn that combo and I could do like 60% damage, but so can everyone else you fight. What happens when you get hit by that? Are you gonna like it now? Are you gonna like that new system?
Yes, and that's where the onboarding is important, right? It has to still feel good to play the game. The game has to still be good. I'm not saying that we can suddenly make a game where, okay, I get hit once, I take 50%, and then I put in the blender, and it feels like I can't do anything. Like, obviously, if it doesn't feel like you can play the game, then it's likely that the game doesn't fit a large mold of target audiences. So, I feel like we've at least confirmed that the gameplay has to be good for enough people to stick around for the long haul, right? Now there's some. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Wait, what do you want to say?
I was gonna say there are exceptions because obviously I don't think Strive is good, right? I'm still holding myself back, but I don't think Strive had to be good in order to succeed, which is profound, right? Because like it was an opportunist game, and I feel like we don't have those often in each generation of fighting games. We don't have these options. Like I even think like maybe hot take, especially given my background, but I think the original Street Fighter 4 was also the opportunist game. Fighting games back then were super dead. Like they were, it was even doubtful whether the genre would return in the competitive forefront. But so they did with Vanilla Street Fighter 4, and that game sucked. But it was enough for people to start to get excited again about the genre. And of course, Capcom saw it from there, brought the game to a better polished level, and look where the game ended up. Old Street Fighter 4 is a beautiful game at the end of its lifespan. And of course, because Capcom decided that it was the end of the game, despite the competitive scene being very strong and I think well developed, well garnered, they decided nope, it was the end. We got Street Fighter 5 on release, and you guys know how that went. So Retro, go ahead.
I think the more we talk about it, I really think that Farfar's point about like the influencer and marketing is actually the main.
Oh, hold on. I just want to point out what Kurushi just said. But Street Fighter V has pretty much followed the same cycle if you think about it. Like now that Street Fighter V is complete, it's actually as a package, it's actually a pretty good game. I know most of you here probably don't care about Street Fighter V,
I like
And-
Street Fighter 5.
and
So
I, along with many other players, definitely had problems with Street Fighter V at launch. But over the years, it really did, get better. I don't know if it's as good as Street Fighter 4, but it. I just want to say, at the end of its lifespan, it's a really solid game.
Yeah, no disagreements from me there.
it's
I played. Oh, go ahead, Retro. Yeah.
no, it's just the update meta. They could release something that's like sus on release, but then
Yeah.
update it.
There you go. Bingo. Bingo.
And depending on how you feel about them, like, I feel like you don't get it. What is it? The problem with that is like, why couldn't this game be like this earlier or like within the first year instead of like taking 5 years?
I think it's just hard with developers because you have to associate with, you really don't know what players want until you put the games out. It's like balancing. Like a lot of people talk about, how developers are stuck at balancing. Yeah, of course, because they're only like a team of maybe like a few hundred developers at top. So obviously they need the data set from all these players in order to actually balance the game, right? So it.
Okay,
But I digress a little bit. It's just a.
Let's not get this twisted, right? I'm not saying the game should be just bad forever. Like, obviously, the game should be some degree of good,
Yeah.
right? Like, and we talked about multiverses. That apparently the gameplay's just not good. So we've already basically
I
that's
think
said
it's
and done.
not good.
Well,
That's
yeah,
why
we're
I
going off of
dropped
what
it.
you said. Yes, none of us have really played it, so we're just gonna go off of what you said, right? Let's just say the gameplay's not good. Okay, there we go. The gameplay's not good. That was probably a big factor in its not succeeding as well as it was expected. Then we look at SF4. That game, the gameplay was not good, but it was still good enough. That maybe that's a distinction we should probably make, right? Because it gave people enough of like a light to say that, all right, I'm willing to grind this game out, and the competitive scene started to appreciate it. We saw a lot of people pick it up on their home consoles and play it online and 360 and PS3. Like those sorts of things were still important, right? Like, and what allowed for that to be possible is the gameplay was good enough. Now, I'm still not willing to admit that Strive gameplay is good enough because, again, it was really the only game. Like, it was basically the only playable game online in a climate where no other fighting games were being released. Like, we think exactly to that 2020 time period, and then of course it got delayed to 2021. No fighting game had been released for like those past 2 years. COVID really had, I guess ever since the fighting games that were released in 2020, but those essentially got axed on arrival as well, thanks to EVOs being canceled. So we see Strive's success. I don't think it should be conflated with it did everything right, because I truly don't think that game necessarily had to do everything right in order to be where it is today.
It just needed to get the
Just need it
rollback.
online.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, it just needed
Yes.
a working online.
It's
Like
trying-
multiple people have said, if that shit had that same that code that it did in its first beta, shit would have been dead on arrival.
Agreed. Yeah. There you go.
And Strive has really bad UX. Like going through all the menu, and do you remember how long it took for people to connect to an actual game? People had to use,
Usually, if you're in Europe,
The tower
Yeah.
mode is
People had
still
to-
ass.
yeah, people had to use proxies to get to connect to games faster. It saved you. There was a comparison video for ACPR and Strive. It takes like you can finish like one game in ACPR by the time you connect to your first round in
Yeah, there was like
there was like a
There's a
whole bunch
lot
of
of, like,
speedrun videos
menu
about
Yeah.
yeah, it's like
I was thinking about the topic of just like, oh, Strive just did enough to succeed, and I agree. Like, I really don't think all these mechanics that us sweat lords like know and love, like, I don't think that's like a part of like why like people will pick up the game that don't know, right?
yeah, like we just
Um,
a lot of us just want the mechanics there because as we play the game, it will become more and more relevant as time passes, and then it
Yes.
adds to that layer. It's
Staying
like
power.
fine, have the chorus thing. Like if you play Guilty Gear, realistically, all you need to know is, does this knock down? If yes, it is still my turn. That is like the simplest thing you have to understand about a fighting game. If you understand that, you are like leagues ahead, and then everything else starts to click as you go up.
Like I was just
That's just
thinking,
not
like,
true though.
EGP,
In
go
my
ahead.
opinion.
EGP, go ahead.
I was just
Okay,
thinking,
no,
like,
sorry.
casuals don't care about like any of these mechanics that we're gonna like talk about in these discussions, right? They're not gonna care about like why changing YRC was good, right? They don't care. What's more
Characters.
important is gonna be like, oh, does the online work? Can I play with friends? Is this game gonna be like $200 and it has like 5 characters? Like, that's not like that's gonna be the more important part. I honestly like think like if like Brawlhalla had like if it was the hardest fighting game on the planet, if it was like had the most mechanics ever, and it was all like, but it would still sell, right? Because they have like Shrek DLC, right? That's what people are gonna be there for. So they can keep. I think fighting game developers, they can keep in all these like mechanics and stuff. They don't have to take stuff out.
But
And just leave it for us.
Yeah,
right?
I can say as a former striver, or at least someone who got in through Guilty Gear through Strive and then went back and played like a bunch of older games and got into those after. Yeah, I can say when I played Strive for the first time, I really just didn't give a shit about how different it was. Like I knew it was different, but like it didn't really stop me from like at least for a time like enjoy the game and like play the game. And then once I was like, oh okay, I want to see like what the previous entries were like, I'm like, holy shit, this is way better. That's just kind of like how I felt.
I personally
Retro.
think
Do you have
go
anything to add to that?
I was gonna say, but the point about Brawlhalla, if you made Brawlhalla like hard to like move in that game, or like in Brawlhalla, there's no knockdown. There's no like state where like you just can't move. I mean, besides like hit stun, right? There's no state where you like can't move, right? So like, and there's no like what do you call it? Mechanics tied to like not moving. If you get what I'm saying, like there might be edge guarding, but there's no like Oki or like keep hitting the person, right? Like the game.
Brawlhalla is a
Here's
very
kind of the
different
thing,
game.
right? I don't know anything about Brawlhalla. I actually don't. All I know is that I see them collaborate with just a lot of people, like Walking Dead, freaking Last Airbender. I'm like, this is cool. Like,
But like if you had to do quarter circle forward
No,
to do like the smash attack or whatever, I guarantee you a lot of people would like not continue playing the game. Like if you had to do all these whack things, well,
Highly-
put quotes
I
on
doubt it.
whack, right?
I
Like,
mean,
to, like, just play
no.
the
If
game.
people have to learn, people will learn.
People will learn
Or
it.
Yeah.
Look at the
like-
people that have like never touched a fighting game before and like picked up like Terry Bogard in Smash or Kazuya or whatever. Those people exist.
What people? I'm looking out for the people. I don't see them. Like
Okay,
like
the
maybe
Smash
what the
Club.
top
What?
players that are playing them, bro. Like what? Like riddles, bro. Like what?
The Smash Club, a lot of people did pick up chair. I just want to, at least get that out of the way.
The Terry?
Yeah.
I obviously I think easy controls is like good, right? Because it's just like, oh, we have the more complex controls for like all of us, and then we have the more simple controls. You can just do one button supers. Like, I think that's good, right? It's just like, what does it take away from competitive? Nothing really, right?
It doesn't. Literally, we had this in Arxis games for over a decade through stylish mode in Exert and CS and CP and CF. Like, it's been there, but who cares? Like, if it's there, it's there. No one cares.
Yeah, I feel like it's somewhat.
I just want to
patronizing.
be able to do my stuff. Like, no one cares about stylish mode. It's fine. It's there. It's cool.
That's the problem, right? I feel like stylish mode actually is it's counterintuitive for what it actually intends to do. It tends to make the onboarding a bit smoother for people that just want to, get in there, press the buttons, maybe play through the visual novel story. That way they can have no issues if they face the input reading cheating bosses, right? But what it actually does is I feel like it just alienates the people that are literal scrubs, like that don't know what they're doing and probably didn't play the tutorial mode. All it really does is just make them feel worse that they got to play the stylish mode, and then it's like, oh, but the real one is there where I can do a lot more. Of course, some people won't care, right? Like we see a lot of, I think, RPGs. I don't want to say JRPGs 'cause I'm not sure if it's just that genre, but a lot of them have like the easy difficulty or medium difficulty, where it's like the enemies won't do certain attacks or something, like just to allow you to play through the story. So like, where's the trade-off, right? Because do we want people to get into the game a bit more easily, or do we just want the game itself to just be easier as a whole?
But for the games that have like the easy mode, that's like, oh, if you just want to experience the story, you play easy mode, right? What's the same equivalent for fighting games? You want to play the easy mode because it's like literally, because you like it's easy. Like there's no other reason, right?
Like stylish in anime games. Like, okay, I just want to press a button, see cool stuff happen. I don't care. I guarantee you, 90% of people who pick stylish mode, they just want to see like, what does this character look like if like he looks competent. If they don't want to just watch someone else play, like they just want to press a button. And then it's like, if you just want something easy in your arcade mode or story mode, options, set difficulty to easy, go in game. Obviously not counting online, but yeah.
I feel like it has to be implemented in a way to let the players see how they could derive from the auto combos, right? So, for example, like something in Dragon Ball Fighters, and using Killer Instinct as an example, the most damaging combo in Killer Instinct is actually one of the easiest combos. So, but then in order to do that, if you do that on a more experienced player, they're just gonna combo break you, right? So it's the implementation just can't be something as simple as, you know, like how KOF or older Guilty Gear does it.
Okay, so do we have some closure on this, guys? Do you feel like we've touched on gameplay direction sufficiently to say that, all right, we have we have
Wait, let's get like a macro from everybody.
What
do you want to see in the next the next fighting game for whatever series? Like, what do you just want to see the same thing that you've always seen? Like, what do you want to see? What do you want in your new fighting game that's like not assume rollback and all that stuff is like there? What would you want to see?
Characters.
I'll be more specific.
Okay.
What characters? I really don't know how more specific I can. Like, for example, I would love to see Makoto in Street Fighter 6, right?
Oh, you said more characters. I thought you just said characters. Okay, got it.
Yeah, more more characters from you know the past installments, and yeah, for me that personally, you know, that's enough for me.
Okay, that's a pretty positive outlook.
Yeah.
I think games with like a triple variation system, like something like a Melty Blood's Moon system, or like the variation system MKs. I think that's a really cool take. I just don't want it to go like completely out of hand like they did with 11. But I wish maybe we got like some other anime games that had some kind of system similar to that.
Like SNK2 or SNK versus Capcom, where you have like the.
There's like grooves in that game. That like changes like system mechanics. I'm talking about like the actual like how the character plays. But I mean that sounds pretty cool too.
Okay.
I've never played those.
I kind of like to see. Here's what I want: a lot of system mechanics and like the hardest puppet character that rewards you. It's kind of what I want to see. But that's okay if that doesn't happen, right? I got +R for that, right? So. Not a big deal.
I just want a lot of good mechanics that feel good to do, and a game that feels good to move.
So like movement, just good, amazing movement.
Yes, I need good movement. I need my movement to feel crisp. If it does not feel crisp, I'm gonna treat that game like DNF, and it's going in the garbage.
I see.
Okay, DNF actually has the worst movement I've ever felt in a modern fighting game.
Isn't it just
feels,
Street Fighter movement?
No. Running in DNF,
I think it's worse than Street Fighter. It's worse.
Running in DNF is like, you know how in Looney Tunes cartoons they'll like look at the feet and you'll see like a spiral underneath their legs and they'll like try to like speed up and then like go into a dash. That's what it's like, but without the fast dash. You just get like a walk speed.
No, I know exactly what you guys are talking about. I literally had to play Swift Master just to avoid the issues with movement in that game. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, I did too.
Like you got the
it
Sonic
feels-
legs under your feet, but you're
Yeah.
not moving. You gotta wait like 5 seconds to move. That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, like I don't want
right.
that, and then I want some depth in the mechanics and like decent decisions between my combo making decisions between corner carry, knockdown, meter gain, stuff like that.
I think having
I want to be able to make decisions on the fly on my combo decision.
yeah, I
Like-
think. Oh, go ahead.
You're like not like just BNB or like BNBs, but like for different endings, right?
Yeah, like I want a BNB for multiple situations. Like, okay, what do I need in this situation? Like, do I want to go push more for a knockdown and try to set up an Okizemi setup? Do I want to try to push more towards the corner so they have nowhere to run to? Do I want to get more meters so I have more options to kill earlier or to do something else? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I
Didn't,
can.
Sh-
Oh, go ahead.
didn't Strive improve on that by removing your normal Gatling route from your P into everything else? Oh, he's good.
I don't know. I can't really say that, but I mean, I will say like when I go through like a bunch of like BlazBlue footage, I'll notice like even if two people play the same character, a lot of their combo making decisions are like, completely different. Their combo routes are different. Their corner combos are different. Even shit like oh they do the same starter here. Oh they get like a 6-8 RC, but like the combo that they do afterwards is like different. One goes for like higher execution, or one goes for like easier, just like better damage, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That shit's always like really cool to me. Like, oh, it feels like really free. Like I can really do what I want.
I actually don't know if there are any fighting games that would that ending at ending with this one combo is always objectively better. Is there one?
Street Fighter 5.
Fantasy
Like-
Strike.
Yeah.
Five?
Yeah.
No. Five. There are still moments when sometimes you have to weigh in the whether you want the Oki or the damage, right? There's still that options there in Street Fighter 5.
I felt this really badly. It's gotten better now, but I felt this really badly at the beginning of Strive, where people were experimenting different combo routes, especially in those first like 6 months, where certain combos we were like, okay, how much damage does this do? Okay, this gets me this much meter, but this combo does the best of both. Plus, it gets the wall break. Plus, it does that like. Have very few options to not break the wall in Strive, so because not breaking it is detrimental to yourself. So it's like you're losing out on that option. Like there's very few times you will actually not want to break the wall, and only certain characters would not want to break the wall because they could just loop their wall slump mix up.
Eno or Heavy Chaos.
Eno's one of them. Chaos is one of them. So it's stuff like that. It's like there's definitely like a point in Strive where a lot of the combos felt if you are not doing this combo, you are just clowning.
No, you're clowning on the opponent, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you're just playing unoptimal for no reason at that point. If you know like the good combo and you're not doing it, you're choosing not to do it, then you're just like, well, okay, fine.
Somewhat unrelated. I just wanted to bring this up. As much as we talk about high damage, have you ever had a game where you did too low damage? Because
Them fighting
there's only one game I played, JoJo All Star Battle. Like the games take fucking forever, but that's just something I wanted to bring up real quick.
Power Rangers Battle for the Grid.
Nope, that
No,
game does
combos
no
combos
damage.
in that game can do TODs.
That game
if
had
you want.
test-
No, they
TODs.
can, but the TODs take forever.
Oh, they take forever. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
I'm not
okay,
gonna.
okay.
All right, guys. I want to bring us back on track. We're trying to bring some closure to this topic. What you want to see in the modern fighting games? I believe we were last on what Frau wanted to see in a modern fighting game, and that's where
He said characters, right?
yeah, you said characters, and then Rizwan mentioned some depth and some expansive decision tree, from my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like a beginner fighting game, like Fantasy Strike, but not Fantasy Strike.
Okay.
No one likes Fantasy Strike. Oh, I only know one person that likes Fantasy Strike. That's his developer.
No, I
Damn.
like Fantasy Strike, but like it could be better. I like a better version of Fantasy Strike, like a better version of Fantasy Strike, like just a beginner fighting game that's not
What if
Fantasy
Fantasy Strike 2 simplified all the mechanics of Fantasy Strike 1? How would you feel?
I don't know how that would even work, but like, are we playing
But
footsie now?
theoretically, if that happened, how would you feel? I'm just curious.
I'd feel horrible because it's already so simple. Like,
I rest my case.
you know what I'm saying? I think that's the same for like other things, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like if you got like a really complex like Blaze Blue Central Fiction, I wouldn't mind if it was like actually, it doesn't even need to be simpler. It just needs to slow down by like 2/3 the frame rate. So like, it's just too fast and it's hard to do what I want to do.
That just takes practice. If you don't want to, like, yeah, you have to understand. Like, I want there to be a practice. Like, there's a joy for a lot of people in that learning process.
Okay,
and getting
not
like,
2/3.
okay.
How about 85% or 90%? 90%, like 90%. There's still you need
Like
to practice.
these percentages don't
you don't
matter
need
in the
to
grand scheme of
practice
things.
that much. I think they do matter. Like the amount you need to practice.
I mean,
like,
if
the
I
difficulty scale.
if
To get better, the practice time is like near infinite.
yeah, you're not on a time limit. It's not like you're gonna die if you don't get better. Like, immediately.
But that's true. But like, you know, like Yomi Hustle. Okay, I know we're gonna. I guess
That's
getting
not
beyond
okay, whatever.
Yomi Hustle, right? There's like infinite time question mark. You don't have to execute anything in that game, right? There's no like you don't have to practice it.
You know,
Because
You
there's
guys-
no input to practice. There's no combo
There's
to
no,
practice.
exactly, right? But you're still doing like a fighting game combo, right? But like you could do it without
No,
any
it's I
practice.
mean it's the same as doing a Yu-Gi-Oh combo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly the same. You don't. Do you really practice a Yu-Gi-Oh combo? It's more like you memorize it. You don't
okay,
have
you
to
actually
practice
do.
it.
You actually do.
You do.
You have to practice them? Okay.
I, as someone that's been playing a lot this last like year and a half, there's so much practicing I do on my Yu-Gi-Oh combos.
Okay, my bad.
It's like
Okay, anyway, okay,
depend
yeah.
like
If we're
it
talking
depends
about,
on
like-
the interaction, the board state, right? Which is like which was like for fighting
we
games,
literally-
depending on the
Dude,
thing you do.
we just had the most fighting game interactive format for the last 6 months in Yu-Gi-Oh, and they fucking murdered it. I'm just saying, it was the most interactive and best
That's
thing
a
I
hot
ever
take right
played.
there, bro.
If
That's a
we're
hot
talking
take.
about like unorthodox fighting games, I actually want to see another like team fighter like Gundam or like Final Fantasy. What's that? game
Dissidia.
called? Yeah, I think I want to see one that actually does well, other than just Gundam in Japanese arcades.
You mean those arena fighters? I thought the Dragon Ball ones are pretty.
Oh,
poppin'.
Budokai coming out. Oh,
Yeah.
soon announced the trailer.
I've never really gotten into those arena fighters though, so I can't really.
Gundam's a little
much
different than most arena fighters because you have so much options and there's a lot of things to worry about, especially when it comes down to like just how you play. Like even moving in Gundam is very difficult.
Yeah, I
Maximizing
personally-
boost usage is very hard.
Sometimes like I don't think fighting games they take out a lot of mechanics, but they actually don't add a lot, so we don't actually see a lot of experimentation. So
Yes, experimentation. Yes. Bingo, bingo.
EGP, if you wanted to play an arena fighter, Jump Force is right there.
True, I agree. We were playing it just this week for
Nope.
FGC.
They just shut it down though, dude. Like, you can't
Yeah,
even
they
play
shut
it.
that online, right? Yeah.
Yeah, only
Oh,
online.
you can't
Offline
even like
is-
P2P like
No,
anyone.
you can play online anymore. It's dead.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay, you guys have all given what you want in your fighting games. What I personally want in a fighting game, I have opened it right now, right? I really like how this game looks. I want the fighting game to look good. I want it to be made with passion and soul. I also want it to play good. I want it to have a good like skill trajectory where it doesn't feel bad as a person's starting out, and also it doesn't feel bad at a person who's like mid-level, like who doesn't know their way just yet. Like, you know, in Tekken 7, I feel like the mid-level is it doesn't feel that good. And beyond all those things, I want the developers to stop focusing on esports as the first priority and just focus on making the game good, like feel good in every aspect, have good features. What I'm really saying is just it needs to be a good video game. Yes.
Whoa!
Like, I'm actually not even joking. Like, it just needs to be a good video game. I don't think any fighting game is good as a video game in the modern day and age. And again, I don't think that's too hot of a take. Like a game like KOF 13 where everyone agrees this game looks beautiful, but no one talks about the gameplay because no one plays it. It's just not it's not ideal to play for everybody. So it still has its rough edges in that regard. I just want there to be a fighting game that's good to play as a video game. Go ahead.
All I'm hearing out of this is you want KOF 15 to finally have working netcode.
Pretty much working. Yes, pretty much. Because I feel like KOF 15 is nearly there.
It's a good game.
I think it's the best modern fighting game.
It just doesn't. No,
Yeah,
I agree.
so
I agree.
far.
I agree. It's a good game.
Oh.
But why does the matchmaking not work?
Right. There you go. So
You
my
sacrificed it for the rollback.
sacrifice. Why do we have to make these sacrifices, dude? I know you're joking, but why do we have to make these sacrifices, man? Like, why can't we just have everything go well for once? Which I
Because
hope.
we live in the patch culture days.
Yeah. No, you're actually right about that. Like,
I don't have to make a game that's complete when I can just complete it later, right?
no, yeah.
That's
you're
just
right.
a trend across all of gaming, not just fighting games. But
No,
I
but
mean,
even
fighting games had the patch thing since day one. Look at all the versions of Street Fighter 2.
no, that's no excuse either, though. Like we've seen even in mainstream games, we've seen them come out good. Or if I can find an example, at least we.
Oh yeah, true. Octopath Traveler only has one update.
That's a
let's go.
that's a
it's a
single player though.
Oh, I know, but like
No, I'm saying just any game, like any
complete game.
video game. Yeah.
That got worse over the years through the patches. Let's see.
No,
You guys
no.
think Street
Not,
Fighter 2 World Warrior was complete on release? It looked, oh my god, no.
no, I'm not saying it has to be. I'm not saying it has to get worse over release. I'm not saying it has to be like award winning on release. I'm just saying it has to be good. Like it just has to be a video game like that I can actually like. Video games are supposed to be fun, right? They're not supposed to feel like a slog or a chore. You know,
I agree.
they're supposed to feel fun, and I feel like developers are actually just completely like it's going over their head that they're supposed to be fun. It's supposed to feel like an experience. Like making a video game immersive, not a bad thing either. But now we have all these games that are like, oh, we got to be esports first, and they start using
Sorry,
that as
video
the
games
excuse.
have to make money.
Yeah, I
You're
think
just wrong.
I think it would be
No,
hard.
They don't have to make money. The video game industry doesn't have any money in it. Like, I'm actually not even joking about that. There's no money in the video game industry. That's why they don't have to make money. And it's clear that the big companies don't care about paying their employees either, because they know it's all gonna. They know in the end everything will be good for their own pockets. So no, I don't think they prioritize even money as their first priority. Like it maybe for themselves, but I think at this point it just has to be a good video game, and the rest will fall into place if it's a good video game. The money will be fine. The esports will be fine. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about like traditional companies like Capcom, SNK, where that sell like digital copies or physical copies of games, but for a company like Riot, it's pretty hard for them not to consider about, hardly like heavily considered about the competitive side of things, which obviously really has to do with esports.
Okay, you want to know how I feel about Riot Games, and I know Retro Rage might agree with me a little bit. I don't think any of Riot's games are good in their gameplay.
Bro, I don't think anyone likes League. Name me one person that.
Yeah, there you go.
There's not a single. I have yet to meet a one person that actually likes that.
I think it's just the social culture around it.
Yeah, it's at this point.
That's
it's
what
it's
gets
a
people
talk.
to play League.
Yeah, it's a talking thing.
It's something to do while you chat with friends. It's
Yeah.
not
Or-
really a game.
For a
that
lot
you
of people, it's a force of habit now. Yeah.
force of habit.
Yeah, like literally, like the amount of
addicted.
times, like I'm remembering my college dorm days. The amount of times I would see my old roommates play League, and say, "I fucking hate this game." And like, why are you still playing it? I was like, "I don't fucking know. I can't stop." It's
Yep.
literally just some drug, and they're all chilling and talking and playing. It's like, yeah, okay, fine.
Okay, well, anyway, that's my closure. That I think the game it has to be a video game. It has to be good. It has to be fun. All of that. And I don't think any fighting game in the modern era has actually managed to succeed in doing that.
Would you
not
say
even- not
any
even KO
fighting
15.
game of any of all time? Would you say any of them meet those requirements or
Ooh.
standards?
Ooh, okay. I haven't really thought about previous fighting games, but I can say that. I can't say that there should be examples. I haven't played this game in particular, but based on what people say, I'm just going off of what people say. Soul Calibur 2 seemed to be that kind of game. I know for a fact that VF4 Evo was that kind of game. Now, of course, it wasn't. It didn't have the staying power just because they released so many new versions, and instantly it becomes obsolete, the previous version. So in the case of VF4 Evo, like, people obviously enjoyed that game on their home console, but after the next version released, people dropped it like a toy, right? But at least people still remember that game was a good video game. Otherwise, I'm not old enough to say that there were video games or fighting games that were good as video games. So I think that actually says a lot by itself. Like, I don't think there's any 09 game that was that level of good. Now, I think they're certainly better than the games right now, but anyway, that doesn't really say much on its own.
Let me put it this way then. If there's one fighting game that you have to play for the rest of your life, and which one would it be?
Any game from the KOF series past 2003. Including 11, not 12, but including like 11, 13, 14, and 15.
Yeah. Personally, it would be O2UM for me. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's technically after 03 though, because that was released in 2009.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me personally.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I hear you.
Well, let's get the opinions of everybody.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Before we
What game would you guys play for the rest of your life if you had to? Let me go ahead and change the topic there.
Or rather, if you cannot play anything else except this one game, or like, which would you choose, right?
I'd say this current version of Plus R, where I'm able to play with rollback.
I gotta say this version of CF where I have rollback. I'd still be playing it if we didn't have rollback.
Nice.
I agree with the current rollback version of CF.
How about
I
you,
play
Retro?
Samurai Showdown with a functional rollback.
Okay. So some good opinions from you guys. Sounds like we're not really picking anything modern. I know Sam Show is 2019,
Got a
but
biased population sample. Slightly.
Yeah, sure. Well, anyway, we'll leave it at that. You guys, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Let me go ahead and close out the stream with a couple of the things that we discussed. So to conclude, for those of you that tuned in, what we discussed today, based on my notes that are very rough, we talked about fighting games, the then and the now. We talked about the philosophy of games, or as of fighting games as a whole, and how they compare to other genres of video games, where they might either miss the mark or do a little bit better, or might be hard to compare. We sort of reached the conclusion that there's some apples to oranges comparisons that might not be worth diving into too hard. And then we talked about specific games such as Tekken 8, Tekken 7, Strive, and other Guilty Gears. We talked a bit about also Project L, not too much on it though. We'll have to revisit that one for sure. We talked about Street Fighter 5, Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 6, and we talked about KOF series. We also talked a bit about patch culture and the opportunist phenomenon. That's what I've titled it here, at least. The opportunist phenomenon just being that if you release with a game that's good enough and all it needs to be at the right time, then you can still succeed, despite it not actually being good in the grand scheme of things. We also sort of reached the idea that good gameplay is important, but sometimes you can get away with not having the best of gameplay if you capture people's hearts in some other ways. And finally, we talked a bit about what we want to see in the genre for the future, what we would play for the rest of our lives if we had to, and accordingly, none of the games we chose were so-called.
It was 2020.
Yeah, no games from the COVID era or onwards. So interesting to note there. And then finally, I have a couple of things to point out from the viewers that were sort of last minute. DDB in the chat says Tekken 7 is pretty much the same combos. Except there's wall carry. But then Alago says, I don't know about other characters, but Potemkin and Strive has a lot of combo expression for me, even for Kara, back, Mega Fist loops alone, which are insanely hard and I almost never try. And then I think that's all. Yeah, I think that's all caught up on the stream comments. So any literal last words, as in like things you want to shill, or any last comments, please keep them very brief if you have them.
Nothing for me, but I really enjoy this, and hopefully we get to expand on this, next time on the next podcast.
Absolutely.
Play fighting games, ish.
Oh, that's a change of heart.
So, major asterisk at that sentence.
Yeah, I'm gonna go play card games and suffer a different fate.
True. 20-minute combos, bruh. That's the equivalent. It's longer. In card games.
I always thought about like just playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Getting combo in Yu-Gi-Oh somehow feels like getting combo in MVC.
I was about to say that, yeah.
Well, it's like no. The difference is if they try to pop off, you just hope you have the hand trap to stop them.
Yeah,
Or
but it's
you
like
have the
random.
ball.
RNG
Yeah.
burst, RNG
Yeah,
burst,
literally.
guys.
Yeah.
Pray that
Or-
you get the RNG burst.
Or you have the board breaker.
I'm only playing fighting games to get that $1 million from Street Fighter 6.
Oh, true.
Oh, that's a base take. I
No,
play
seriously,
fighting games for the $1 million.
Seriously though, like if anything, you have the best chance since the next Capcom Cup is gonna be very close to Street Fighter 6. I know you're joking, but yeah.
He's
cares?
not
It's-
going to
we-
stop
we-
a kid with unlimited free time.
Yeah,
at
no.
Discord. Let's
We
stop.
all know. No. We all know there's only gonna be two outcomes: Tokido or some like teenager with unlimited time. There is no in between. Those are your two options.
Dude, what? Just real quick, kids are cracked, dude. Fortnite
Agree.
kids, though, dude, they're going ham on that building apartment complex, bro.
Yeah,
Like
see,
I could
if they
never
can-
do that.
If they can learn how to do that, they can learn how to play fighting.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
That's why mechanical depth is important and difficulty is not that big of a deal.
Can that just be macroed with the way how they build things?
Yeah, but like it's
There's
still
still
hard, right? Have you
difficulty.
seen like their like the thing, dude? They macro it. They're like,
How fast they have to operate, even if you
Yeah,
macro
they still have
it, it's
to.
still hard.
They still have to like do a
Hmm.
lot of crazy work with that. It's very difficult.
Okay, cool. I'm glad we have some conclusions on this. So I appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts on this topic, and thanks for also just being very fervent about, giving your ideas in here, because I think we missed a lot of that from a couple of previous episodes. I appreciate you guys, and yeah, that's gonna do it for those of you that watched this stream. This was Ursine Combo Lab Audio episode 15 on the direction of modern fighting games. Thanks for watching. This is Crucial Drive signing out.
Thanks for having us.